Yo, Atlas speaking and welcome to a brand new series on the channel. What if I was reborn in Naruto as a civilian orphan trained and became the greatest seal master changing shinobi history? Synopsis: a man who would have preferred not to be there found himself reincarnated into the Narutoverse. Much to his chagrin, he received no powers, system or anything the fanfic protagonists he read about in his past life usually got. Eventually, finding his calling in the art of sealing and excelling, he has only his own determination and smarts to survive the upcoming apocalyptic events. Now, if only Sarutobi for some reason did not butterfly most of his foreknowledge away with his superb decision-making. What is life in store for him now? One thing is certain, things don't always go his way. Make sure to check out the author linked in the description. Let the tale begin. Chapter 1, Rin. Rin, a 17-year-old young man with blonde hair framing his face and falling on his back in a short tail, watched with his blue eyes as a man entered his booth in a restaurant. Standing up, Rin smiled. "Hello. You are Ebisu, right? It is nice to meet you." He politely greeted him with a small bow. Honestly, as a reincarnated person, Rin disliked all these cultural customs of this world. But when in Rome, sigh, it was quite troublesome. Why did it have to be Narutoverse of all places? He would have really preferred a more easygoing setting. "Greetings, Chunin Rin. I heard about your request and graciously decided to fulfill it," Ebisu dramatically exclaimed while moving his head in just the right way to make his glasses glint from the reflected light, but under one condition. He spoke in a deeper tone. "Right." Rin's smile froze and his lips awkwardly twitched as he motioned for Ebisu to sit. The man acted a bit too self-important for Rin's tastes, but he let it pass because this was his very first chance in a long time to get what he wanted. For 2 months now, ever since he became a Chunin, really, Rin has been looking for a way to learn the shadow clone technique. Unfortunately, Konoha did not have a ninja library like it did in all the fanfiction he had read in his previous life. There was a civilian library with books on perfectly civilian things, but a convenient place where a ninja could access ninja techniques of various ranks for free? If that existed, everyone would be using it, including the many spies from other villages that are no doubt in the village. Konoha's higher-ups were not stupid. Such a place did not exist. Ninjas could buy techniques at Konoha's armory from a catalog of some village-owned techniques. But it wasn't a simple process and it depended on a person's rank and merit. There was an entire system to gauge one's merit based on his missions and stuff. Shadow clones was a Jonin-level technique, and while everybody who became a Jonin could learn it, not many people did. Unless you were Naruto, there wasn't much of a point in learning it. Having your chakra pool in a battle is tantamount to suicide. Clones that dispel with one hit are not worth the massive cost. It really only worked for Naruto because he could make hundreds of them and not even be winded. For everybody else, it was a reconnaissance technique that should not be used in battle. Not when there were other, much cheaper, and much more durable elemental clone variants. Rin, however, was just a Chunin and could not get the technique from Konoha's armory. So, he paid for a mission, requesting someone to teach it to him. When he did it, he felt smug. He felt as if he had found a loophole and was surprised this was allowed. But he quickly realized the problem. Ninjas were a secretive bunch. In the fanfictions in Rin's previous life, a dude could just come to Guy and tell him he is interested in taijutsu, and Guy would buy him weights, train with him every day, and even teach him his signature technique, the 8 inner gates. That was not how this thing worked in reality. Ninjas prided themselves on their techniques. They did not teach them willy-nilly. Rin's mission was registered for 2 months and absolutely nobody came forward, willing to teach him. Part of it was that accepting Rin's mission meant becoming responsible for his health during his tutelage, and shadow clones were genuinely dangerous to perform. The technique was in the Jonin level section for a reason. And Rin was still just a Chunin. Nobody wanted to take the responsibility of teaching a fresh Chunin a dangerous Jonin rank technique that could kill the user if it was performed wrongly. Another part of it was that Jonins who knew the technique had better things to do. It might not have appeared like it in the anime, but Jonins were very busy. But Rin felt the biggest part was that ninjas simply did not like sharing their techniques. They worked really hard for them. They had to climb the ranks and possibly buy their techniques unless they had a Jonin instructor or were from a clan. They did not want to just give them to somebody for free. Even Jonin instructors did not teach their techniques to all their pupils. Usually, they taught them to be competent ninjas for a Chunin rank, and maybe they picked one of the three to impart some of their techniques, but even then they would not teach them everything. It was just how this world worked. Techniques were the life-saving secrets of their trade. They were the stuff that earned ninjas their livelihood. Not even in Ren's previous world would masters teach their apprentices everything they knew about their profession. They usually kept the valuable knowledge, the stuff that truly makes good money, to themselves. It was the same thing in this world. Mecham. What condition? Ren asked as he sat down. He tried to play it off, but he was quite nervous. After 2 whole months of nothing, finally, somebody was willing to entertain his request. But it seemed there was more to it. Of course, there would be strings attached. Silly me. Ren inwardly sighed, his eyes not leaving Ebisu as he wondered what the man could want from him. Ebisu didn't instantly answer. He just took out the mission scroll and 2 other scrolls from his vest and put them on the table, making Ren curiously raise an eyebrow. I will not teach you the technique. Instead, I will provide you with a scroll on it. Ebisu started, and Ren had to admit, for a comedy relief character from the anime, the real-life Ebisu was one smart motherfucker. This way, he would pocket the money from the mission and completely avoid the responsibility of teaching a dangerous technique to a Chunin. And if Ren got killed learning it? It wouldn't be Ebisu's fault. Ren was recognized as an adult in this world ever since he graduated from the academy. He was responsible for his actions. If he decided to try learning a dangerous technique from a scroll, that was on him. Ren was starting to see that Ebisu's rank of Jonin was not exactly unearned. On top of that, I want you to take over an assignment from me. Ebisu continued, making Ren inwardly frown. Now this part of these talks was the truly important one. Ren was starting to get desperate after 2 months, but he wouldn't just accept some sort of suicide mission meant for a Jonin just to learn the shadow clones. He was not that dumb. I recently received a very generous offer from the Hyuga clan. They want me to teach Hinata Hyuga. Alas, I am far too preoccupied with the honored grandson and don't have the time. Ebisu shook his head in feigned regret, almost causing Ren to groan when he realized where this was going. And he didn't like it one bit. The problem was that this world seemed to be an alternate universe. Ren remembered his past life on the night the Kyuubi attacked Konoha. Everything seemed to be the same as in canon from his meager information gathering when he was a child. But after the Uchiha massacre, something probably flipped in Sarutobi's head, because he did not just ban early graduation from the academy. He also made the graduation age 16 instead of 13. And since then? Canon was fucked. Yeeted out of the window. Worse yet. The village had small problems for 3 years afterward due to the decrease of Genins in the field. But Konoha was strong and it withstood it. Then, when the first batch of 16-year-old and more proficient Genins came out, Konoha kinda dominated. And it was quickly noticed. So, while the other villages low-key laughed at Konoha for 3 years, it didn't take long for them to realize that Konoha's new policy was working. They also promptly implemented it, increasing the graduation age of their own academy equivalents and fucking up the future even further. Needless to say, Ren was still sometimes having a panic attack when he thought about the future. It was one thing to know that by the time he turned 20, a vengeful and murderous chakra goddess capable of blowing up cities with her pinky would come back to the world and he would be on the opposite side on the battlefield. Well, if he survived Madara, Kabuto, hordes of immortal resurrected Kage-level ninjas with infinite chakra, and didn't get caught in the infinite Tsukuyomi on top of that. Yup. He was fucked. It sounded quite hopeless if he was honest. But it was a completely different thing to know that but also have his foreknowledge compromised because Sarutobi decided to fuck it all up with one decree. Would Pain show up at Konoha's doorsteps when Naruto graduates? Since he will be 16 then? Wouldn't that be an automatic game over? Or would Akatsuki's plan be pushed back since it seemed the fourth Mizukage was still alive? Naruto and his classmates were 14 now, but the sand/sound invasion didn't happen. Even the Chunin exams that were supposed to be in Konoha happened in Suna instead. So far, it seems the Chunin exams in Konoha will happen half a year after Naruto's class graduation. This part was the same as in canon. So, would Orochimaru attack then? Would it change? How was Rin supposed to know? He was going sparse just thinking about it. The only thing he reasonably could do was to keep his ears open for any sort of info on Jinchuriki while trying to get stronger to survive whatever bullshit this world was going to throw at him, hoping that Naruto and Sasuke could save the day. Rin didn't like feeling like that. Knowing that his life depended on somebody like Naruto? Don't get him wrong, watching Naruto's antics was funny. When it was anime. But Rin knew just how many situations Naruto survived due to sheer dumb luck. All it would take is one slip up and Naruto would be no more. What if Zabuza decided to swing his sword at the kiddies instead of just appearing in the middle of their formation during his first attack? What if Naruto didn't manage to summon Gamabunta when Gaara was trying to Sabakaku his ass into a paste? What if Pain actually did the smart thing and brought some Bija chakra suppressing seals with him when he fought Naruto? What if Sasuke made it in time to Orochimaru to have his body snatched after his defection? Literally, anything could go wrong. And that's if the world was still going the canon route. Now though? Sheer spite was probably a big part of the reason why Rin didn't just give up and decided to put his all into becoming powerful in his own way. He decided he would either get there or, hopefully not, die trying. Because what else could he do than try and hope for the best? Naturally, I can't just refuse. The Hyuga clan is quite influential. And that's where you come in. Ebisu beamed, trying to sound as if he was doing Rin a favor. Rin was not buying it. Chapter 2, Ebisu's Kindness. I would usually go with this kind of offer to Ms. Kurenai. Ebisu ruefully sighed. Alas, she recently became a Jonin and signed up for a duty as a Jonin instructor. His cheeks reddened and it was obvious to Rin that Ebisu was genuinely sad that he could not curry favor with the woman. Rin was only half listening to Ebisu, though. He was trying to put things together in his head. He wondered if this was how Kurenai received her spot as Hinata's caretaker in the canon during Hinata's later academy years. Or was that even a canon thing? He couldn't remember. It was 17 years since his reincarnation, and while he tried to remember all the important points, the details were kinda spotty by now. It was not as if he had something like a clemency, after all. With all the fanfiction he read, he wouldn't be surprised if some of the details he took as facts were plain wrong. For example, Naruto. The kid was not physically abused at all. No mobs. No beatings. Nothing of the sort. Rin mentally shook his head, calming his straying thoughts and refocusing on the important issue at hand. Being Hinata's tutor was going to be a long-term mission with a heavy time investment. If Kurenai was still a Chunin on the verge of becoming Jonin, the connection to the Hyuga clan could really help her get the promotion. Nepotism was a real thing in this world too, and there were many elite Chunin who had the necessary skill to be Jonin but never managed to get the rank up. Especially the specialists who heavily focused on one ninja art like Kurenai had it rough. The requirements were harsh. Jonins had to be good in all the primary ninja arts. You either had the skill, or you had just enough to be passable plus some political backing. In canon, where Hinata was still a kid and wasn't deemed a complete failure, where there was still a slight hope that she would be a late bloomer and maybe even become the clan head later on, this would have been a godsend opportunity. Rin could see why Ebisu would offer it to Kurenai if he tried to get a date out of her. But in this reality? Kurenai already had a team and she was a Jonin. She didn't have time or need for this. And Hinata? The girl was 14 now. Still meek as a lamb. Still losing to her younger sister. Still showing exactly zero aptitude for the kunoichi life and the position of the clan head. Still a stuttering mess. Even more now, to be honest. If this were before the Uchiha massacre, the girl would have been a kunoichi for an entire year by now. And that probably made all the difference to her clan. Hinata was no longer the heiress. She was set to be sealed upon her 17th birthday, and Hanabi was now officially the new clan heiress. There were even some rumors outside of the Hyuga clan about Hinata being a failure as a kunoichi nowadays. And if Rin had to bet, he would say the Hyuga clan elders spread those in order to put pressure on Hayashi and get the girl sealed as soon as possible. But he didn't have any inside information, and this was just his guess based on what he knew of canon. The fact that Hinata still had until her 17th birthday before she was sealed showed how much Hayashi cared. The man probably couldn't put it off any longer. Hinata's standing in the clan was much lower now than in canon, as she was no longer the heiress. She was just another future branch Hyuga member. And with that, the benefits of being her tutor tanked too. There would be no favors for her tutor. It now made complete sense why Ebisu was trying to push this opportunity onto Rin. He probably couldn't refuse it without getting a massive hit to his reputation and some heat from the Hyuga clan. But he could throw this hot potato to some other idiot. After all, this was basically a babysitting duty. The Hyuga clan wasn't expecting Hinata's tutor to turn her into a badass kunoichi. They just wanted her to become competent in the field as a genin by the time she graduated. Meaning, they just wanted somebody to help her with her academy work. Enough to make her pass with grades that won't tarnish the Hyuga reputation. Honestly, fresh chunin like Rin should be overqualified for that. Not to mention a jonin renowned for his abilities as a personal tutor like Ebisu. This whole assignment sounded like a massive pain in the ass. The only upside was the pay, which was irrelevant for Rin since the Hyuga clan might reluctantly accept him as Ebisu's substitute with the man's recommendation, but they will definitely not pay him the same money despite the heavy time investment still being the same. Hell, some clan elders who dislike Hinata might prefer Rin over Ebisu. It would be much cheaper for the clan, and the chance of Hinata becoming competent enough to win her clan headship back from Hanabi would be lower. I am giving you an opportunity here, Ebisu said in a kind tone. With this, you might be able to form connections with the noble Hyuga clan and get to learn the technique you seek. He smiled. I would have done this assignment myself, but I am too busy nowadays. So, I decided to use it to help my fellow Konoha comrade, and when I saw your mission, it just clicked. Maybe in the future, you will be able to repay this favor I am giving you, Mr. Rin. He spoke as if Rin owed him for this. But Rin just sat there, smiling, as he listened to Ebisu. Cool as a cucumber. He just kept smiling. When Ebisu was done, Rin amicably nodded. I see. Ebisu-senpai is truly caring. I can see now how you could become well known as the best personal tutor in the village. Inwardly though, this bastard totally thinks I am stupid. Rin deadpanned as Ebisu preened under the praise. Ebisu's plan wasn't bad. Rin could put the pieces together and see the whole picture only because he focused on gathering any information he could get his hands on to try and puzzle out how future events would be affected. He also had his foreknowledge, and while most of it was flushed down the toilet by Sarutobi's great decision-making skills, a lot of general information was still usable. A run-of-the-mill fresh chunin wouldn't have any way of knowing these things. He would probably believe this was a great opportunity and would be grateful to Ebisu for years to come. Rin's status as a recently promoted chunin was probably also a part of the reason why Ebisu decided to approach him. He thought him to be still mostly clueless about political factions within Konoha and how things worked. Most fresh chunin would not realize that this golden opportunity was not useful to them. They would see them make a connection to the influential noble Hyuga clan and tunnel vision on it. Rin could easily see most freshly promoted chunin fall for this bullshit. But I gratefully accept this opportunity, senpai. Rin calmly said with a peaceful smile, you truly helped me out with this. He opened his mouth to follow up with, I hope I will also be able to return the favor one day, but then his mind registered what he was about to say and he stopped. He meant it in the I hope I will also be able to screw you over one day way. But Ebisu would misunderstand him, and if Rin one day became strong, he might pester him. Saying that sentence would make it more troublesome for Rin to politely tell Ebisu fuck you in the future, so he refrained. Can I ask you to take care of the process and inform the Hyuga clan, Mr. Ebisu? I have no idea where to even start with that kind of stuff. Rin asked in a sheepish tone, rubbing the back of his head. If the man wanted to throw him into a shit situation, the least he could do was to properly put the work into setting it up and persuading all the concerned parties. No way was Rin going to bother with that. He could already see how utterly bothersome it would be to make Hyuga accept the change. Rin was happy to sit that conversation out and leave everything to Ebisu. Ebisu eagerly nodded, "Leave it to me. I can do that much. Just sign the mission scroll and the assignment from the Hyuga clan, please. Once I have your signature, I will do my utmost best to persuade the Hyuga clan." Rin had to wonder if Ebisu wasn't going to throw him under the bus by saying something like, "He begged me for this opportunity, and as the best and kind private tutor Konoha has to offer, I just had to reluctantly help out my kohai." That would definitely not help Rin to make a good first impression on Hyuga, and Rin could totally see Ebisu doing something like that. Alas, it didn't really matter. Screw Hyuga and his impressions. Rin signed the scrolls and pocketed the scroll on shadow clones after checking it. Then, Ebisu quickly excused himself and happily legged it out of the restaurant, maybe a bit too quickly, but Rin was just a fresh chunin, so he totally wouldn't notice, right? Rin just rolled his eyes at him as he pulled out his Fuinjutsu notebook and started fiddling with some ideas while eating the dishes on the table. The joke was on Ebisu. Dealing with Hinata would be no doubt troublesome beyond the wildest Nara dreams. But the girl had Byakugan. And Rin was a reincarnated individual. Who knows? Maybe she could even help him with some of his ideas. Rin's lips involuntarily stretched into an excited smile. I wonder if some of the fanfiction theories about Byakugan and how it could be useful to a ninja will work. Maybe it could help with ninjutsu? After all, it can see chakra. So surely. He distractedly chewed on yakiniku while feeling like a kid about to enter a candy store. One thing was certain. He was so going to make Hinata learn medical ninjutsu at some point. The girl was going to become a damn good medic ninja, even if he would need to drag her to that point kicking and screaming. Ebisu and the Hyuga clan will only expect Rin to make Hinata capable of passing her graduation exam in 2 years with a good score. But he wasn't going to allow his student to be the same kind of a waste of space as the other Hyugas. She wasn't going to be wasting her utterly broken bloodline that could freaking see chakra on funny chakra pokes and call it a day. He was going to make her into a competent kunoichi and experiment with Byakugan's capabilities to his heart's content, even if it gave all Hyuga elders a heart stroke. Believe it. Chapter 3, Shadow Clones. It took Ebisu an entire week to set things up, and Rin was very happy about it as it gave him time to learn the shadow clones. Contrary to popular belief, it wasn't easy. Just crossing your fingers and shouting the technique's name to the heavens was not enough. Trust him. He tried. And he felt like an idiot afterward when nothing happened. He was 5, then. Remembering it, he felt like an even bigger idiot. Because if he had miraculously pulled it off, the technique would have killed him with how costly it was. Even today, the biggest problem with learning the shadow clones for Rin was the chakra. It cost a whole lot. He could maybe do 5 tries before he was spent and had to wait for hours until his chakra pool recharged. So, Rin had to go slow, try it, and then analyze and figure out what he was doing wrong. The technique was quite complicated too. It took Rin 6 days, and by the end of it, he had to concede that Naruto was a genius. Even if he was an idiot. Then again, recalling the other geniuses he remembered from the anime, Rin had to admit that these two labels go hand in hand in this world. Rin recognized that Naruto was really good at ninjutsu years ago. It was when he was learning Rasengan. The fact that Naruto managed to pull it off during the short time he and Jiraiya looked for Tsunade was astonishing to Rin after he experienced just how difficult it was. That said, Naruto had enough chakra to train an entire day without a break. Rin could give it an hour at best before he had to call it quits due to exhaustion creeping in. That, like nothing else, hammered down just how special Naruto was in this world. Chakra-wise, Rin was not like Sakura. He was above average for his age and rank. And while he got much better than he was years ago when he tried to learn Rasengan for the first time, he still acutely felt the need to use his chakra efficiently. because it was a very limited resource. The anime did not do it justice. Since it followed Naruto's life, the chakra cost of techniques was mostly glossed over. The dude could just spam them all day long, and even if he got near chakra exhaustion, Kurama chakra battery just recharged him free of charge. The ninja Jesus did not need to trifle himself with mortal worries like chakra capacity, unlike Rin and the rest of the ninja scrubs. In this world, he was the biggest cheater of them all. Much to Ren's dismay, he had only one day to try some of his shadow clones plus Fuinjutsu combo ideas, and most of them were in the very initial test phase, but so far, he was happy. Rin did not want to learn the technique to use it in combat. He focused on Fuinjutsu. He had years to consider things like his specialization when it came to ninja arts. And he was very aware that he couldn't just learn it all. Maybe if he was stuffed into Naruto he would have tried that. With 1,000 shadow clones, it might even be a possibility. But Rin didn't have such leeway. He had to specialize to be effective. Just like every other ninja alive. Nobody was master of all. After thinking of both the pros and cons of every ninja art for literally years during his early childhood years, Rin picked Fuinjutsu. Because that was the only thing that ever worked on Kaguya. No taijutsu, no ninjutsu, and certainly no jinjutsu ever even scratched her. Naruto landed a hit on her face. But it didn't even faze her. Heck, it did not even leave a bruise. And while Ren's hope that he would get so good at Fuinjutsu that he could give trouble to Kaguya might be foolish, he had to at least try, no? So, why not choose the only thing that could actually affect her or the Bijou? Maybe the fact that he wouldn't need to half-kill himself with physical training, stewing himself in his sweat under the sun, and panting in exhaustion every single day might have had something to do with his decision too. It was no wonder his taijutsu still sucked. He hated physical training. Loathed it with his very being and eagerly cheated at it with his Fuinjutsu. That old-fashioned Saitama training every ninja in the village tried to do as some form of self-torture? Yeah, screw that. He had enough physical education classes in the academy to be completely fed up with that bullshit. He was an otaku in his past life, and being reborn into Narutoverse would not change that. He might have spent his whole 2 last academy years creating the absolutely best, most user-friendly, and just slightly uncomfortable while still beneficial self-adjusting gravity seals he could manage to come up with, but it was totally worth it. It got him a get-out-of-the-jail-forever free card when it came to physical training. If he had trained properly in the physical aspects of being a ninja with his gravity seals, he would have had a body as strong as Guy's in a few short years. With 10th the effort too. But taijutsu was not only about having a strong body. Technique and fighting style were important too, and Rin just had to admit to himself that he was not and never will be that talented at close-quarter combat. It was much better to invest his time into Fuinjutsu for Rin. That's where the shadow clones came in. He had many ideas, but not enough time. He had many dangerous experiments to do but didn't want to die in a fiery explosion. Fuinjutsu had a reputation for being dangerous for a reason. Hence why he was so desperate for the shadow clone technique. Almost every really good idea he had was dangerous. Almost every single one had a high chance of going horribly wrong. But with shadow clones? That no longer mattered. Rin could create 5 copies with his current chakra capacity. That was actually really good. He once spoke with a ninjutsu specialist jonin who had above average chakra capacity for a jonin rank ninja, and even that guy could only make 7 copies. Sadly, the bastard refused to teach Rin the technique despite being wasted. He just laughed Rin out of the room. Sure, Rin was around 10 years old back then, but still, laughing at him was rude. That said, creating 5 clones was pushing it for Rin. Each of the 5 copies would have very little chakra, making them useless both in combat and for training purposes. Creating 3 was optimal. 2 if he actually wanted to train with chakra. But Rin learned the technique to help him with Fuinjutsu research. For that, he didn't need much chakra, so 3 copies were just fine. Fuinjutsu was very chakra efficient. His clones could brainstorm Fuinjutsu ideas for hours without going poof. And they could experiment for quite some time too, depending on how much chakra a seal needed. But the most valuable use of shadow clones so far was the creation of exploding tags. Rin was a part of the Barrier Corps. He got there after getting assigned to Team 7, which meant that fucked Hitaki and his equally retarded Bell test. No. Nobody used such ridiculous bullshit as a test in the village. Yes, Rin knew others used it in the past, but surely they were not as unreasonable as Hitaki. Yes, Rin was salty. Konoha was known for teamwork, but it was not something Jonins required from Genins fresh out of the academy. Nobody tested teamwork of all things. Rin knew that much. He asked around. His classmates were very willing to share their stories. Teamwork was something that developed over time. It wasn't supposed to be there from the very start. The academy was a competitive environment in the first place. The students competed with each other constantly. It was encouraged, and it was expected. You can't just throw them, with that mindset cultivated for years, and tell them to compete for bells while secretly expecting them to work together and actually think they would do what you want. Of course, they're not going to do that. There is a reason why none of Kakashi's previous teams passed, duh. Jonins are supposed to teach teamwork. The emphasis on the word teach is really, really important in that sentence. Even Kakashi's very own team was as dysfunctional as they come, always arguing, always fighting, even having some weird love triangle. Despite knowing the answer, and almost screaming it to the faces of his would-be teammates, Rin's team flunked. Because his teammates just didn't want to work together, believing that one of the three would not pass a bit too much. There was no makeup test like Naruto had. Nobody tied to the post. No, don't feed that guy thingy. It was just, ya didn't work together. Shucks to be you, teehee. Honestly, Rin realized that Hitaki just didn't want a team. No matter what, Rin's team flunked the second they had the misfortune of being assigned to Kakashi. He wasn't that angry over it anymore anyway. A person should not be angry at the mentally ill. Fuck Hitaki. So, Rin failed, but he didn't return to the academy. There was no returning to the academy. That was a blatant lie meant as a form of psychological pressure. Once you graduate from the academy, you are a Konoha ninja. There is no easy way out. You signed up for military duty. Congratulations. The Jonin test is just a way to determine if you get into the elite Jonin track course or not. Having an experienced ninja who can show you the ropes and teach you the basics is invaluable. Many people who manage to get on the Jonin-led team become Jonins later in their lives. That's statistically proven, and it is why the village wastes a few Jonins to babysit some talented Genins. It's basically an officer course. Those who fail their test are redistributed into various departments in Konoha's military depending on the talents they showed in the academy, or if they are not particularly impressive at anything, they end up in the Genin Corps. The place for the fodder. Of course, even somebody from the Genin Corps can become a Jonin. But it is much harder for them. It usually requires so much commitment and hard work that would make even Guy proud. Rin was assigned to the Barrier Corps because his Fuinjutsu aptitude was noticed. While it was called Barrier Corps, it was really just a fancy name for the Fuinjutsu division. Its main responsibility was the various barrier Fuinjutsu around Konoha, hence the name. It wasn't anything special. No, they did not create teleports, nor did they learn how to seal bijou. They created exploding tags. As a member of that division, Rin had a weekly quota of exploding tags he had to create and hand into the Konoha armory. It was a very bothersome task and ate up a very big chunk of his time. As a Chunin, Rin had to make 50 of them a week. That was around 1 to 2 hours of work per day, 5 days a week of repetitive work where if he didn't focus enough, he could blow himself up. Some days Rin even regretted ranking up to Chunin. That's how bad it was. But alas, only Chunins could access some Fuinjutsu scrolls in the Barrier Corps library, so Rin took one for the team. All in the name of pseudoscience. But thanks to his shadow clones, he was finally free of that chore. There was no way in hell Rin would be ranking up to Jonin even if he could. That Kosuka guy? The Eternal Genin? He was totally onto something when he refused his promotion. The increase in workload was truly not worth it. It's not as if Rin had to be Jonin to become strong. Just look at Naruto, the Genin that became Hokage. Chapter 4, Meeting the Hyugas. Rin sat in Hayashi's office, nervous and trying to prevent himself from sweating with some clever application of chakra he made himself in his younger years when he was bored out of his mind in the academy. In front of him, with a desk between them, was Hayashi in all his stoic glory and bland gray kimono that wouldn't be amiss in a labor camp, and Rin was genuinely happy that Hyugas could not read minds, staring dispassionately at him with a stiff poker face. But from the atmosphere in the office, Rin had the inkling the man did not like him all that much. It made him wonder what kind of bullshit Ebisu told Hayashi. To the side, closer to the wall rather than the table, sat Hinata in her jacket, making Rin briefly wonder why she wore it inside, and her hair cut in a bob cut that really did not do her looks much good. Her face also clearly betrayed that she would love to be anywhere else but here. It was anxiously scrunched up and her eyes darted all over the room but at her father and Rin. She really looked like a cornered animal that wanted to flee. When Rin greeted her a few minutes prior, the girl couldn't even look him in the eyes properly. It was bad. A part of him regretted taking Ebisu's offer, but then he had to remind himself how much time he was going to save every week and how much research and experimentation it opened up for him, only to be reminded how much time he would have to spend actually teaching Hinata because his pride would not let him neglect her once he took her as his responsibility. He had very mixed feelings about his situation. Your duties as Hinata's tutor will be teaching her how to be a competent ninja and helping her with her academy practice. You shall escort her to the academy in the mornings and pick her up in the afternoon. Then, you can either bring her to the Hyuga compound or proceed to give her lessons. Her afternoons and evenings are free, but I want to see her back home no later than 10 in the evening. Hayashi spoke, giving this tutoring thing some ground rules. Rin barely managed to nod his understanding when Hayashi started speaking again. My daughter is unfit for the kunoichi lifestyle. It pains me to say, but with the increased graduation requirements and her lack of talent, she will have a hard time getting good enough to graduate. That's why it was decided to hire a personal tutor so she wouldn't shame the Hyuga name further. Rin slowly blinked, keeping his expression impassive as his mind tried to process what he just heard. Was that burn necessary? He inwardly asked himself with a wince, noticing from the corner of his eyes how Hinata ashamedly ducked her head and gripped the hem of her jacket with both hands. Hayashi basically called her incompetent enough to be unable to become Genin on her own to her face. Considering that even civilians managed to do that, it really showed how much faith he did not have in her. Unfortunately, she was deemed unfit to receive more clan training until she showed she was worth the time and effort. Something she hasn't done for a very long time. He continued, throwing a disapproving glance at Hinata, but she stayed silent and Hayashi broke his poker face, actually showing a small disappointed frown. If only for a second. Stop it! She is already dead. Rin inwardly sighed when he noticed the hint of tears in the corners of Hinata's eyes. But Hayashi was not done yet. You may try to bring her up to speed, and if you manage, I would be most grateful. But don't worry. Failure is expected. Now you are just deliberately firing shots into a corpse, man. Ren's lips twitched. That was harsh. If the girl lived with this for most of her childhood, it was no wonder she turned into a mess. Hinata released a small sob before shutting her eyes as she wiped her tears with the sleeve of her jacket. She barely managed to choke the rest of her sobs, her lips quivering as she held her emotions inside. This time, however, Hayashi did not look at her at all. As if she wasn't even in the room. It made Rin wonder if the man was truly that bad at parenting or if he was experimenting with some new form of mental torture for children. I also feel I need to warn you. My daughter showed a proclivity for inappropriate thoughts about males outside the clan. This made Hinata's body visibly shiver and Rin realized Hayashi was speaking about her crush on Naruto. It made him wonder what was up with that. But he wasn't stupid enough to ask. Such a distasteful hobby was reluctantly tolerated while she was the heiress, but as Hyuga, she has a duty to her family. I can no longer avert my eyes. And considering the man had Byakugan, that's a serious thing to say. Rin also understood that this was a subtle warning for him. Don't worry. I have an inborn mental block preventing me from romancing underage girls. He dryly said. He was a touch rude, but honestly, he was so done with this prick. As a reincarnated individual, he was a tad bit more mature than his peers. It was almost impossible to make friends. As for romance, Rin would love to have some of that. But the younger girls were immature and the older kunoichi were, well, kunoichi. And that was a massive problem on its own with the brainwashing Konoha had going on. He wasn't 100% on the I'd die for Konoha bandwagon, and he didn't want to start a relationship with some fanatic only to always look over his shoulder, wondering if his beloved kunoichi was going to betray him for some I am a good Konoha ninja points. Signing and deciding to leave this depressing topic, Rin instead focused on what Hayashi said and couldn't help but mentally chuckle. Duty to her family, my ass. He inwardly rolled his eyes. What an excellent way to say that she is supposed to breed only with her family members. Well, at least now he knew how to give the girls some serious motivation. Naruto just might save the day without even knowing it. As expected from the protagonist. Good. Hayashi seriously nodded. I'd like to ask you to watch her and report any indecency that would bring shame to the Hyuga name from her side. We shall correct it promptly. Did this prick just ask me to Gestapo his own daughter with her still in the room? Rin wondered as he noticed Hinata slightly flinch, realizing that the indecency he mentioned was Hinata's stalking problem. Clearly, the Hyugas threw the boot hard on Hinata and her activities after she stopped being heiress. Rin expected this to be bad, but the situation exceeded his expectations. I had someone look into you. Hayashi changed the topic and Rin found himself involuntarily glad about it. You became a chunin only a year after your graduation. That is commendable. While you are no genius, that's still sufficient to help tutor my daughter through the academy. Bruh? He switched targets from Hinata to me, didn't he? And with that, Rin's amusement was back. Unfortunately for Hayashi, Rin was not a child. He also didn't give a damn about Hayashi's opinion, so his words did not hurt him. Such a shame that Niji hadn't graduated yet, or I would have a field day pointing out that not even their fabled clan genius managed to become a chunin within a year. He regretfully thought. Ah, the missed opportunities. Even if the promotion was issued from a less regarded place like the Barrier Corps. Hayashi continued, and Rin had the suspicion the man was doing it on purpose to see his reaction. Heh. He totally just implied my division is inferior. Rin thought as his lips quivered. He just barely managed to prevent himself from smiling. Because from a ninja point of view, the man wasn't wrong. Most of them were not fighters. Is there anything else I need to know? Rin asked, interrupting Hayashi's observation. He was genuinely curious about what the man would say next. I know you are an orphan, but it would do you well to learn some etiquette. Hayashi's tone did not even fluctuate as he said that. It stayed bland and polite. Maybe my daughter could teach you. It is one of the very few things she is actually quite knowledgeable about. Even if she constantly fails at practical implementation. Unfazed, Rin just nonchalantly shrugged. Okay. If you would allow it, my lord, I'd like to take my new student to training grounds and get our introductions out of the way, maybe test her a bit to know where to start. Better. Hayashi said with a mild frown. Definitely not liking the casual shrug. He then nodded at Hinata before looking back at Rin, dismissed. Rin didn't need to be told twice. He gestured at Hinata to follow him and left the room, hiding behind his guise of ignorance and not even giving Hayashi a farewell bow as was proper. In the end, maybe the man did manage to get under his skin. Chapter 5, Hinata Hyuga. Meeting Hayashi made Rin question if the man loved Hinata at all. Maybe the canon had it wrong? Or was Hayashi acting like a total bastard due to some stupid clan politics or something? Honestly, Rin didn't care. His mood was somewhat ruined. Training Hinata was firmly classified as a chore in his mind, but now he was getting emotionally invested because he felt pity toward the girl. Her situation was worse than in canon, but unlike canon, there didn't seem to be anybody in her corner. Well, the circumstances pushed her under Rin's tutelage, and despite his misgivings, he was going to give her a fair shot. Somebody had to. Arriving at a small clearing in the middle of a forest within the training ground number 41 at the pace of a jog that a fresh genin should be able to follow, Rin stopped and looked behind himself as Hinata almost reached him, breathing slightly harder while sweat was covering her face. The girl was clearly in good physical shape for her age, but that heavy jacket was not a good choice during summer. Especially not while exercising. Right. Rin nodded and approached a nearby tree before sitting on the ground and leaning his back on its trunk. Make yourself comfortable. We are going to have a small talk while your body calms down. The jog here took quite a long because this training ground was Rin's favorite. There were many types of training grounds with various terrains. This one was a public training ground, so anybody could come here, but because it was further away from the village, not many people came here. Better yet, it was very big, so even if somebody did come, there was quite a big chance they would not walk on Rin's training, since he liked to use the forested parts at the back of this training ground. Hinata unsurely followed Rin's order, her head ducked and looking at the ground while choosing a tree 4 meters away from Rin and imitating him by sitting down and leaning her back on it. Introductions first, Rin cheerfully said, inwardly sighing at how withdrawn in her shell the girl was. If it was Naruto, he would have had already sung him an entire story about ramen and his goal of becoming a Hokage. My name is Rin and I am a Chunin from the Barrier Core Division of the village. I focus on Fuinjutsu. I like good food. Rin's lips suddenly quirked up into a small smirk, and today I have discovered a newfound dislike for Hyuga. Your turn, he said, enjoying how Hinata's head whipped toward him at the last part of his introduction, and she gave him a wide-eyed look full of shock. Now that Rin thought about it, this was probably the first time in the girl's life that she heard something like that said about her father. Honestly, Hyushi's behavior wasn't the reason he said it. Rin's words were truthful, but he also just felt the girl needed to hear these words. I am Hinata. Hyuga. Hinata unsurely started speaking, from the Hyuga clan. Ito, Taijutsu. She embarrassedly flushed at that, and it took her a few seconds to gather her confidence again and continue, but Rin just patiently waited. I like my sister. Rin raised his eyebrow at that. The girl said that one without stuttering. And I dislike, the girl fell silent, glancing at Rin before ducking her head and clutching her hands together. And when Rin thought she wasn't going to speak further and was about to end the introductions with a sigh, he heard her faint whisper, my father. Olishly blinking, Rin was floored. He did not expect that when he made his own introduction. The canon Hinata never disliked her father despite how badly she was treated. He wondered if the past year was truly so bad for her that the girl's feelings on the matter actually changed. Well, it did not matter for now. Okay. Let's set some ground rules first, Rin said. Hinata slightly nodded with a muffled "mm." Rule number 1. Rin proclaimed, making a slight pause to create suspense, the jacket has to go. Hinata's eyes looked at him in shock for the second time that day, making Rin self-satisfied. But he decided to press on. Rule number 2. You are going to grow your hair out. He told her in a no-nonsense manner, and the girl actually blushed, probably confused about what was going on. Well? Why are you not taking the jacket off? You do have a shirt underneath it, no? Rin asked with a raised eyebrow, but Hinata only clutched at the hem of her jacket, looking unsure. Why? She quietly asked. Because I want you to grow a damn spine. He couldn't tell her that. With a sigh, Rin decided to explain a bit differently, it will hinder your training. It is a very nice jacket, and it really was. And you look good in it, and she really did. Rin smiled as the girl's cheeks reddened even more, but she still seemed to pay his words rapt attention. But during our training sessions, please take it off. It wasn't as if Rin wanted to ogle the girl or something equally inane like that. He just needed her to grow less shy, and since the girl seemed to have body issues, there was a straightforward way to do it. Making her wear fewer clothes and praising her appearance here or there would hopefully slowly build her self-confidence as she became a stronger kunoichi under Rin's tutelage. The quick way to do this would be to throw her to Anko for a week or two. But while Rin did want Hinata to become more confident, he didn't want her to show up wearing only a mesh shirt and trench coat. He could already imagine Hayashi's expression if that happened. Unfortunately, Rin had to do this the slow way. Reluctantly, Hinata obeyed and took her jacket off. Rin had to say, the girl was going to have some serious assets when she was finished growing. She quickly tried to cover herself with her arms out of embarrassment despite wearing a lilac shirt. So, Rin decided that she needed another distraction. As for your hair, Umu, that's for my personal enjoyment, of course. He sagely nodded, you are going to be a very pretty girl one day. Hearing that, Hinata whined, not used to compliments, her hands covered her red face. But she was still not fainting, which pleased Rin. He was kinda trying to gently probe her limit in this regard, but it seemed that since he was not an orange-wearing idiot there would be no problems with her fainting due to slight teasing. That pleased him immensely. Having her randomly faint would definitely get old really fast. He didn't have the patience to deal with that level of incompetence. Smiling at the adorable little thing in front of him, Rin decided to throw her a bone. If you do well in your training and your hair becomes long enough, I will teach you hair techniques so that it won't be a liability but an asset instead. So do your best. Okay? Now that seemed to cheer the girl up and made her look a bit eager. Good. She wasn't such a lost cause, after all. Chapter 6, Byakugan busted? Alright. With that, the introductions are over. Let's do some ninja ing, then. Rin spoke as he slowly stood up, gesturing at Hinata to follow him. You are 14, so if I remember correctly, your class is learning the tree walking now in the academy? Did I get that right? When Hiruzen Sarutobi increased the graduation ages, he did not simply let the kids slack off for 3 years. Nowadays, to become a Jin, a person needs to know how to tree walk and water walk too. But learning those takes months each. Once again, the anime did not do these skills justice. Naruto and Sasuke learned them in a week while Sakura got it on her first try. But that is not a correct representation of how learning these abilities usually goes. Both Naruto and Sasuke have much more chakra than their peers. So, they could go on, training for hours, while a normal 13-year-old kid could last maybe for 30 minutes tops. There was a reason why kids were not taught these skills in the academy. They simply did not have enough chakra to make practicing worthwhile. Quick math. Let's say that Sasuke trained tree walking for 12 hours a day for 5 days. That's 60 hours spent on it. But if a child can only train for 30 minutes a day before getting exhausted, then that child would need 4 whole months to get to Sasuke's level in that skill. These 4 months would be spent in intense frustration as making progress would be very slow for the kid. Having almost a day-long break between 30-minute-long practice sessions would feel like crawling. Rin would know. He went through the experience. He felt he was not making enough progress. But there was nothing he could do about it. It felt like shit. That was the difference and why the academy did not teach it. Not to mention, children are not the most patient beings. Many would give up halfway through the 4 months if they even reached that far. Rin only managed to stick with practicing and not throw the towel into the ring because of his mature mindset. Teaching an 11-year-old and teaching a 14-year-old is a massive difference. When a child enters puberty at around the 13th year of life, the body starts growing rapidly, both physically and mentally. And chakra reflects that growth. The most chakra growth happens between the 13th and 20th year of life. It's why the ninjas train the most at those ages. It was also why the academy students previously graduated at 13. The villages didn't throw kids on the battlefield for kicks and giggles. There were real reasons for doing things in certain ways. Rin wasn't saying there were no better ways. If nothing else, Sarutobi's decision to increase the graduation ages showed that things could be done better and even provide a more effective result. But well, it is what it is. Yes. But I already know that. Hinata mumbled, looking at the ground. Hinata, look at me. Rin gently spoke, causing the girl to raise her head. No. Don't avert your eyes. Keep looking at me. The tips of the girl's ears reddened, but she did what he asked even if it looked like she had to fight with herself to do so. Okay. Now repeat that sentence again. Rin patiently said with a small amused smile. He couldn't be harsh with this girl. That wouldn't work. She experienced harsh treatment her entire life. She understood that. No. Smiling, being easygoing and amicable was the way to go. Hinata gave Rin a timid questioning look, but Rin just encouraged her. Go on. I'll already know, tea tree walking. Again. I already know tea tree walking. Again. It took a few tries, but Hinata was slowly losing the stutter as she started to grow somewhat fed up with Rin ordering her to repeat the sentence. I already know tree walking. She finally almost shouted on the 12th time she had to repeat it, looking very peeved. She even gave Rin a small and brief glare before she turned her head to the side with a blush when she realized what she had done. Rin took that as a massive progress. Good girl. No stutter. He joyfully exclaimed, and without even realizing it himself he ruffled the girl's hair. When he realized what he was doing before the situation could turn awkward, Rin stopped and played it off by turning toward a nearby tree. Well, then, since you say you know what you are doing, show me. He gestured at the tree. Walk. With a nod, Hinata did as asked, and she didn't seem to have much problem. She didn't need to run up. She just normally walked as if the tree bark was the ground and gravity did not exist. Macham. Your tree walking is good enough. Rin noted, the only thing you need to train when it comes to that is endurance and experience keeping it going for long periods of time. And that can only be trained by doing. So, we, and by that I mean you, will do a tree walking version of Dodge the Shuriken for 2 hours as a warm-up every day. Rin gave Hinata a winning smile, almost causing her to falter and fall off the tree when she heard about the great morning torture he was going to make her go through. Don't worry, I will help you by throwing the shurikens. It's going to be fun. She should be grateful too. Rin didn't have anybody to throw shurikens at him when he trained. He was being very kind. With a small smirk at how reluctant the girl looked, Rin spoke, Come on, follow me. There is a pond that way. I am going to show you water walking. Not waiting for a response, Rin just turned around and started legging it toward the pond. It took them 3 minutes of leisure walk to reach the pond, and Rin instantly walked onto the water's surface. Activate your Byakugan and observe properly. Look at what I am doing with my chakra in my feet. You are adjusting your chakra according to the water surface. Hinata muttered with brows furrowed in concentration as she tried to put her foot on the water surface only for it to sink. Rin happily observed her as she tried to do it again. It was nice that she did not need to be prompted to do it. On her 5th try, her feet finally started pushing against the water's surface. It still sank, but there was a visible resistance to it now. Rin tilted his head. This was way too freaking fast. You are still observing how my churka is doing it, huh? Hinata's concentration was broken due to her surprise, and she almost fell forward into the water, but Rin was quick enough to catch her and gently put her back on the shoreline. You are learning the technique very quickly. Are you trying to imitate the way my chakra is doing it? Wasn't I supposed to do that? Hinata timidly ducked her head, not seeing the dry look Rin shot her for stuttering again. With a sigh, Rin shook his head, No. You are doing great. And the girl's entire face went red. Continue. Don't be afraid to ask me to take a few steps if you need to see how my chakra would behave or ask questions. I can stand here all day. With a small poof, a notebook appeared in Ren's hand and he opened it, thinking about some of his Fuinjutsu theories there and how to improve them. He was happy that he was not wrong. Byakugan was busted and Hinata did not need him to verbally teach her much. He only needed to be there as an example and the girl's eyes would do the rest. 30 minutes later, Hinata stood on the water's surface, trying to hide the big happy smile stretching on her lips as Rin congratulated her for her achievement. Adjusting the chakra is still difficult. She tapped her foot on the water with a small complaint. Yes. But don't worry. Eventually, it will become a reflex. Rin told her. He had to admit, he was a bit envious of the girl. It took him 2 months to get to the level she achieved within 30 minutes. And she did it without falling into the pond once. The highest place she was wet after this training session was the middle of her calves. Rin always knew that bloodline ninjas were special. But now he had seen it and he was still working on believing how bullshit this whole thing was. It was a very bittersweet feeling. As her teacher, he was proud, but as a ninja, he was disgruntled. Unlike Sharingan, Hinata's Byakugan did not allow her to copy techniques instantly, but since she could see chakra, she could see exactly what she was supposed to do with her chakra to imitate what Rin was doing. She just needed to practice it and learn it for herself. Rin had no idea why Hyugas did not utilize this part of the Byakugan. But for some strange reason, they held disdain for both elemental ninjutsu and medical ninjutsu, going as far as forbidding their children to practice them. They also didn't have much regard for jinjutsu because their eyes could see through them easily. It was silly. And Rin would not allow Hinata to develop a mindset like that. Since you succeeded in walking on water and still have some chakra left, I guess you deserve a reward. Rin said as he exited the pond with Hinata curiously following him. He just now noticed, but the girl was way less tense around him now than she was when they started. Unsealing several water balloons, Rin grinned. Oh, yes. He was going to do exactly that. While he wasn't going to teach the girl all the steps for Rasengan, at least not yet, he knew that the steps themselves were the best chakra manipulation exercises available. And since she was Hyuga, learning how spinning her chakra worked could potentially help her learn Kaiten. He led her to learn techniques by observing during this training session, after all. And she did have Byakugan and did live in the Hyuga compound where the main branch members practiced. Now, he wasn't going to tell her to learn it. At least not for some months yet. He was wondering if she could come to that conclusion by herself and how long it would take her. Taking one balloon into his hand, Rin put his chakra into it while swirling it in multiple directions at a very fast speed with quite a force. The balloon popped within a second, causing Hinata to shriek in shock as she was showered in water. Rin might or might not have done a little chakra thingy to direct the water in a certain direction. Yup. He was definitely still butthurt that she got the water walking down so easily. Chuckling at the huffy pout the stammering girl gave him, Rin took 2 water balloons. He gave her one while starting to swirl his chakra within the second one. This time more gently and slowly. Do you see what I am doing with my chakra? He asked Hinata, who activated her Byakugan again and nodded as she curiously watched the balloon while trying to imitate it with her own, causing it to at most slightly move on her palm. After 3 minutes of doing that, Rin gradually increased the speed of his chakra until the balloon popped a few seconds later. Once you can spin the chakra in multiple directions, just practice to make it faster. When you get to a certain speed, the balloon will pop. He told the girl, it took me 5 months to learn, so don't feel bad if it takes you a few months dash. A splat suddenly resounded through the surroundings as Rin was drenched in water from Hinata's balloon, making him stare at her in shock. In response, the girl only gave him a sweet, overly innocent, smile, blushing deep red as she covered her smiling lips with her hand and softly giggled, averting her head in embarrassment. No. Fuck this. You gotta be kidding me. For the sake of his sanity, Rin mentally decided this didn't happen. Chapter 7, Food of Gods. After telling Hinata that the trick with the water balloon was secret and she should not share it, the training was over for the day. She did not have much chakra left anyway. Rin escorted her back to her clan compound and went on his way. That happened yesterday. Today, the training session was nothing special. Rin just fiddled with few ninjutsu ideas while absent-mindedly throwing blunted shuriken at Hinata, who was dodging it while water walking. He then retrieved the shuriken with a chakra string, only to repeat the process. Her face when he told her that since she mastered water walking, they were going to play the dodge the shuriken on water rather than on a tree was priceless. She even threw a glare or two at Rin for a second after the 20th time she fell into the pond. Rin had a lot of fun trying to make her glare at him again. All in the name of confidence building. It was for the greater good. When Hinata's chakra became considerably depleted after an hour of doing that, Rin had her run laps around the pond, while having a shadow clone throw shuriken at her and scream dodge. It only took her 2 falls into the pond to realize why she had to run around it. Rin's clone was deliberately throwing the shuriken in a way that led to her stumbling, slipping, or tripping into it. That would show her for drenching him with a water balloon. All in all, they were done for today in 2 hours and Rin took Hinata home. Done with his work for the day, Rin sent 2 shadow clones to the training ground 41 and let them loose to experiment with their recent ideas. He wanted to join them but his stomach grumbled in protest, sending Rin on his way to the Yakiniku Q restaurant. Since he found himself in Konoha, Rin naturally had to try out the Ichiraku ramen, but he couldn't say he found it as enchanting as Naruto. Sure, it tasted good, but Rin still preferred a proper meal with a lot of meat. Yakiniku Q was a great restaurant for that. The best in the village, really. Not to mention, Rin was the proud owner of a 50% discount for a lifetime there. Sitting down in the restaurant, Rin put his open Fuinjutsu notebook on the table and was fortunate enough for a waiter to instantly approach him. He ordered some cooked potatoes and a steak and made himself comfortable. The reason Rin owned the lifetime discount in this restaurant was the food. When he was younger, he couldn't just train all the time. He didn't have enough chakra. Technically, he could have trained physically for the rest of the day after his chakra ran out, but Rin absolutely hated physical training. He couldn't stand doing it for more than 2 hours a day. So, the question arose. What was he supposed to do with the rest of his day? This was before he found his first Fuinjutsu scroll, so it was not like he could have lost himself in the magnificent intricacies of the sealing art either. In the end, Rin decided to try his hand at recreating food from his previous life. This whole world was too Japanese-ish for his tastes. They had tomatoes and noodles, but spaghetti bolognese? Nope. That wasn't a thing. Pizza? Nobody heard of that. Potatoes? Sure, they existed, but if you offered them to the people of Konoha a few years ago, they would take it as an insult. These scrubs had zero idea of how to properly prepare them. It was only rice this, rice that with them. Rin took it upon himself to show these heathens the awesomeness of godly food like potatoes. Bring them the holy food of pizza and show them the proper way of noodles by introducing them to spaghetti bolognese. It took him a lot of time. Rin was by no means a great cook, but he remembered some recipes from his past life and had the time to experiment. Spaghetti was the easiest. Noodles existed. Tomato sauce wasn't that hard. Sure, the noodles were not the same as in Rin's past life and there was no Parmesan cheese, so the taste was a bit different in the end, but he remembered that he couldn't help but cry when he tasted them again for the first time in this life. He sold the recipe to the Akimichi clan. If there was one thing the Akimikis were interested in, it was new recipes. Needless to say, Rin's tomato noodles, as the uneducated fat heathens insultingly named the dish, was a big hit with the clan, and later on with the village. Unfortunately, a patent recipe was not a thing in this world. Rin received a quite generous lump sum of money. The Akimichi clan was gracious and gave him 500,000 ryo for it. So, around $50,000. Rin was surprised to get that much. He certainly did not regret wasting his time with it. No longer did he have to live off of the meager orphan funds he received. And it also allowed him to buy better ingredients and try his hand at other things. Pizza was hard and it took Rin 3 months to remake a version of it that looked and tasted good enough. The Akimichi had a hard time evaluating how much they should pay him for it since there were many possible variations of pizza, but in the end, they gave him 1 S-rank pay, so 1,000,000 ryo. And Rin had no illusions. He knew they would be making hundreds of millions of ryo on his recipes. But he was satisfied. He didn't feel bad about it. The Akimichi were the wealthiest clan in the whole village, even if they kept that info low-key. They owned over 70% of the restaurants in the village. That was the main reason why Rin was selling his recipes to them. He wanted to eat these foods, but he did not want to always have to cook them himself. Naturally, the Akimichi clan introduced these dishes in their restaurants after buying them, so it was a win-win for Rin. He could finally taste a piece of his lost home. Potatoes, though, now those were hard to get. They existed in this world. But nobody ate them in the land of fire. They came from the land of earth, so that was a problem. And there wasn't much interest in them over here either, so peddlers usually did not bring any. Rin had to specifically request them from a merchant, and it earned him a weirded out look from the man. Then he had to wait for 6 freaking months for the delivery. It was insane. This world was in dire need of Amazon. Well, maybe once Kaguya is dealt with. Rin hummed to himself. That wasn't such a bad idea. He didn't want to be a ninja until the end of his life. After Kaguya, he will be retiring, thank you very much. As much as he loved fiddling with the seals and chakra, he hated ninja work. Nobody sane could voluntarily sign up for it if they had any other choice. Alas, Rin did not have a choice. It was the only way for him to get the chance to grow stronger. If there was another way, he would have taken it in a heartbeat. He did not enjoy the experience of being a killer for hire. When Rin finally got the potatoes, the rest was easy. Presenting them to the Akimichi clan was a bit awkward. They were all very skeptical about them, mostly because they came from the land of Earth, which was a ridiculous reason, but hey, this was Konoha and propaganda was something fed to the natives since they understood the local language. Rin wouldn't be surprised if they thought of potatoes as the food of the devil or some stupid shit like that. But they did try it, and let's just say that the Akimichi did not own just the restaurants. They also owned many fields around the village. After that day, many fields started growing potatoes. The waiter showed up with Ren's order, and with satisfaction filling him at the sight of the potatoes and steak, he dug in. He felt proud for instigating the great potato revolution in Konoha. He was one step closer to enlightening these heathens to the true meaning of the food of gods. Chapter 8, Mission. Time passed, and slowly, it was 2 weeks since Ren became Hinata's tutor. The girl was improving every day, especially at dodging and chakra control. Her chakra capacity was slowly increasing too. If it went like this for 2 more weeks, Ren was thinking about introducing some elemental training for her. After all, the sooner she started with that, the better. But today, he skipped the training session with Hinata. He also notified Hayashi that he would not be available to teach her for the next week and gave Hinata a scroll with instructions about what to do during his absence. He was going on a mission. As a member of the Barrier Corps, Rin technically did not need to do missions. Unlike what the fanfiction stories in his past life portrayed, Konoha higher-ups were not stupid enough to send their researchers and scholars to the front lines for no reason. There were many ninjas with the official rank of Genin or Chunin who were not exactly combatants. Oh, they knew the basics and were at least borderline competent for their rank, but their fighting abilities were nothing to write home about. For example, that girl from Canon with swirly glasses who joined the cryptanalysis squad. Shiho, or whatever was her name. She was part of Konoha's military because of her intelligence, not her fighting prowess. She was a ninja, but she was not a soldier. As a part of the military force, she had a rank, but they wouldn't be sending her on missions because that's not her job. Rin was in a similar position. The Barrier Corps were full of Fuinjutsu users. Many of these people were weak. They were the scholarly type who loved spending their days scribbling with a brush, deep in their thoughts. Not doing push-ups or running around the village. They were not combatants, and they had different duties to the village. They were still ninja and had a rank, but missions were voluntary for them unless it was something like maintenance work on seals, which fell under their specialty. As far as Rin knew, the same went for many other divisions in Konoha. Somebody like Hibiki, Inoichi, or Shikaku. They had to focus on running various parts of Konoha's military. They couldn't go dilly-dallying on a mission who knows where. They had responsibilities inside the village. Some of these men hadn't been on a mission outside the village for well over several years. The reason why Rin wanted to go on a mission despite not needing to was simple. He wanted a vacation from the village. As a ninja, he couldn't leave without permission. And good luck getting permission to leave for anything but a mission if you are an active ninja. Sometimes, Konoha felt like a prison to Rin. Big, spacious, full of people but a freaking prison nonetheless. He was in a new world and he couldn't even travel freely. He really envied all these overpowered, naive, pathetic, dense harem protagonist retards from Japanese mangas. At least, they could go wherever they pleased. Entering the mission office, as many ninjas called it, Rin saw two Chunin manning the desk with missions. Contrary to popular belief, the Hokage was not always present. He did not give missions to every ninja in the village. Rin did not know the exact number, but there were over 20,000 ninjas in Konoha. Hokage could never manage to give everyone their missions by himself. Not to mention, the man had a village to run. Paperwork to sign. He couldn't be sitting at the assignment desk all day. Instead, Hokage usually only gave missions to the teams under Jonin instructors. Because they were on a fast-track Jonin course and there was a chance these kids would be the next generation of village's Jonins. So, knowing them was worth the time investment for the Hokage. That's why all the Jonins with Jonin teams took their missions during the same time of the day. Because that's when the Hokage was present at the mission assignment desk. Then, Hokage mostly dealt with emergency or high-level mission assignments. S-rank missions had to go through the Hokage office, as did some A ranks. But scrubs like Rin? They got their missions from overworked, unimportant career Chunin who were practically just over-glorified paper pushers for the village. Honestly, Rin was not complaining. He preferred those people over having the personal attention of Hokage. He still sometimes woke up cursing Sarutobi for fucking up the cannon. It was a habit for Rin by now. Bandit extermination? The Chunin dealing with Rin asked after they exchanged greetings, and Rin informed him he would like to have a simple and easy C-rank mission. No, Rin said with a grimace. He took a few of those in the past. He needed expendable test subjects for some of his fuinjutsu that were applied to the body. Obviously, he wasn't going to test them on himself. Duh. But one thing those missions taught him was that this was not a story. It was a reality. And the reality was never black and white. In fanfiction, it was simple. Bandits were bad guys and needed to be killed. In reality? Sure, some of them were scum. But then there were those bandit groups that were nothing but starving orphan kids. They do not kill. They do not rape. They do not kidnap. They just rob money from travelers because they want to feed themselves and their families. And then they are labeled as bandits and somebody hires ninjas to kill them. And so they die. Most likely in a very brutal and painful way. Then, their family either starves or their brothers become the next generation of bandits and their sisters the next generation of prostitutes. It was how this world worked under all that we have punch wizards, glitter of the anime. Did anybody still wonder why Rin absolutely hated being a ninja? Rin always wondered in his past life why bandits still existed in Narutoverse when ninjas always hunted them. But it was quite simple. There were billions of people in this world. This world might even have more people than his previous one. But there are only around 100 to 200,000 ninjas. That's counting all the major hidden villages alongside all the minor ones. And that number contained the researchers and paper pushers. Even then, it was a drop in the bucket. Some bandit groups can go a decade without anybody hiring ninjas to exterminate them. Many bandits manage to even retire from that lifestyle before someone hires a ninja to take care of their group. Rin didn't feel like killing bandits today. If he encountered another bandit group made of kids, it would sour his mood for the next month. It wasn't as if he could let them go either. Once he took the mission, his job would be to kill them. It was better to avoid it altogether. Preferably protection detail. Rin told the Chunin, "I'd like the client to be some hot chick too." He jovially grinned at the bored man, making his lips twitch. "Oh, and wouldn't you like me to pack you food and drinks too?" The Chunin asked with an eye roll. "Nope. I've got my own." "Sorry, but I doubt you cook as well as the chefs at Yakiniku Q." Rin offhandedly said as he shrugged, giving the Chunin a smirk. "Cheeky brat." The Chunin laughed and Ren's gloomy mood improved too thanks to it. "For that, I will find a protection detail for some old geezer for you." Meh. I'll still get the protection detail mission, so whatever. I take that as a personal win. Rin gave him a double thumbs up, mouthing, "Youth," to him, which made even the other chunin in the room snicker. The atmosphere in the room improved, but it barely lasted a few seconds. Anbu suddenly appeared and looked around the room, finding only the three chunin, which made him let out a quiet curse under his nose. It was around lunch, so the mission office was pretty much empty. The atmosphere became tense once more. Anbu only ever showed themselves when something serious was going on. So, this was nothing good. Lord Hokage needs you three for an emergency mission. Report to him immediately, he said in a bland, unidentifiable tone before disappearing, making the three chunin in the room look at each other. Well, there goes my peaceful mission. Rin sighed and his shoulders slumped. Fing old bastard. Always screwing things over for me without even knowing I exist. Sarutobi Hiruzen was definitely not Rin's favorite person. Chapter 9, A Mess. You three were called for an emergency mission and will be sent as reinforcements for another team. The Hokage gravely said to Rin and the two other chunin who previously manned the assignment desk, while the three of them stood in front of Hokage's desk at attention. This situation caught us at the wrong time. Sarutobi sighed. A new village, hidden in the sound, emerged right in between Konoha, Iwa, and Kumo, so the tensions are at an all-time high. Many jonins were reassigned to reinforce the borders or run important missions. We are simply short-handed. You three were the chunin we were able to gather the quickest. Ah, so I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Rin inwardly grumbled. Yes, he technically did not need to do missions, but that's not counting emergency missions. Hokage was the dictator of this place, and if he told somebody to go on a mission, they had to obey even if they were from a division that normally did not do missions. Rin couldn't even complain because he was certain the Hokage already had the records and files for him and both of the guys around him. He didn't seem very impressed. Rin had the impression that the Hokage was sending them because he really couldn't get anybody else on such short notice. Of course, something like this would happen. So far, Rin's life has been quite peaceful, and no mission has gone to hell for him yet. He kinda hoped to keep it that way, but... Your mission is to head to the Land of Waves and reinforce Team 8 led by Kurenai Yuhi, who went there as a protection detail for a bridge builder called Tazuna a week ago. Sarutobi promptly narrated the important information, not wasting even 1 second. What? Rin barely kept himself from widening his eyes in shock. Deep down, he hoped that either Tazuna's mission had already happened and the dude was unfortunately offed, or the whole timeline was going to be pushed to a later date after Naruto graduated. But clearly, that was not happening since the mission was right here. A whole year later than it normally should have happened, all the while Naruto was still in the academy, playing pranks and annoying his teachers with his stupidity. A new intel resurfaced after Team 8 left. Sarutobi spoke, and it was obvious he didn't like the situation either. The Land of Waves is currently oppressed by a businessman Gato who is known to hire rogue ninjas, and Tazuna is a thorn in his eye. The mission might be upgraded to B, maybe even A rank. Hopefully, it won't come to that. Protect Tazuna and ensure the survival of Team 8. You have 10 minutes to prepare and leave the village. For a briefing, this was a very quick one. Barely 3 minutes passed since they entered the Hokage's office and he was already sending them off. He must be really worried for Team 8. Rin inwardly hummed. Well, Team 8 was full of clan kids, so it was only natural. Understood, Lord Hokage. Rin and the other two chunins spoke in unison. Dismissed. Rin didn't need to pack. It was the perk of being a Fuinjutsu specialist. So, he simply headed straight for the gate, and when he arrived there, he pulled out his notebook, immersing himself in seal work. He had to wait for the other two members of his new impromptu team anyway. Rin. No last name. That was actually quite common in this world, Fuinjutsu specialist. Bad at taijutsu. No a Fuinjutsu. Rin quickly narrated as he hopped from tree to tree, a bit frustrated with the slow pace, but he was not the team leader, so he did not get to set it. They were barely moving at low chunin level speed. Itsuki Taro, the team leader, started his introduction. Shuriken Jutsu Specialist. Passable Taijutsu. Fujin Jutsu and 2 defensive earth techniques. This way of quick introduction was not something Rin made up. They actually taught how to do this in the academy. In case a person is teamed up with strangers and they are short on time, they need a quick way to give a broad overview of their capabilities to their teammates and the team leader. Kinji Jinrei. Specializing in Kinjutsu. And Rin inwardly winced at that. He kinda doubted it would be relevant against somebody like Zabuza. No elemental techniques. Weak sensory talent. Of course. Rin mentally groaned again. These two sounded like Mizuki and Irika. They were the dregs of the Chunin rank. Genins who were promoted to Chunin not because of their strength but because they just served the village long enough and accumulated enough mission records to earn the promotion. It was not anything to be ashamed of, but Rin didn't exactly feel reassured having teammates like this when he was most likely going to face Zabuza of all people. Today just plain sucks, doesn't it? He looked at the gray sky, wondering how Hinata was doing. Rin and his teammates ran in silence for almost an entire day, focusing on keeping their breathing stable and keeping pace. When they finally reached the shoreline, they did not stop. They were Chunin and did not need a boat. They just ran straight to the land of water on the water's surface. It was not that far away anyway, and the journey on the water took them around 3 minutes. They stopped only when they were deeper in the land of waves, as now they would need to find Team 8 and their client. "Are you sure you are bad at taijutsu?" Itsuki asked while giving Rin a disbelieving glance, his hands on his knees as he tried to calm his hard breathing. Rin just shrugged, not even winded. He wore his gravity seals the entire last year, releasing them only once every month to adjust to his new physical capabilities. Now that he was on a dangerous mission, he fully released them, so his body felt extremely light. He did not even feel the light jog they had just undergone. Then again, he didn't want to feel proud about being better than his current teammates. These dudes were basically just Genins who served long enough to be promoted. Surpassing them meant exactly nothing. "We should dash." Rin started speaking when Kinji's eyes suddenly widened. Somebody just used a powerful ninjutsu, at least B rank, around a kilometer away in the direction of the road. Kinji said, and the three of them looked at each other in resignation. It seemed they found Team 8. But somebody else got to them first. With no time to spare, the trio ran toward the battle, and Rin's stomach sank as the nearer they got, the stronger the mist became. Deep down, he truly hoped that since everything changed, maybe Zabuza would not be under Gato's employ. That it would be somebody else. Somebody weaker. But the thick white mist surrounding the battlefield was not a very good sign. "We are very close," Kinji muttered, knowing that both Rin and Itsuki would hear him, clearly nervous at being in a thick mist where his senses were impaired. It was even worse since they could hear the vague sound of fighting in front of them but couldn't see anything. Rin gathered chakra into his palms, refining it quickly into wind chakra as he pointed them forward. Great breakthrough. He thought, and released a powerful but fairly unfocused burst of wind chakra. It wasn't properly molded, so the technique wouldn't be hurting anybody, and it was more akin to a harsh gust of wind, but Rin couldn't afford to shoot an offensive area of effect windjutsu in this mist anyway. He could hit his allies. The only thing it did was to blow away the mist, showing the battlefield just as Zabuza appeared in the middle of the Genin's protection formation around Tazuna, just like he did in the canon, but that's where the similarities ended. The Inuzuka kid barely managed to react and kicked Tazuna away as Zabuza's sword cleaved the air where Tazuna's torso was just a moment ago. Sadly, the sword didn't stop there. All 3 Genin and a dog were promptly bisected horizontally across their chests, their corpses falling to the ground in 2 parts with a bloody splatter dyeing the earth red as Kurina Yuhi screamed in sorrow and rage, and ran at the swordsman. "Shit!" Rin inwardly sighed, feeling bad about the kids, as he ran forward to prevent the woman from committing suicide by Zabuza. "Mission failed, I guess." Rin mentally grumbled. This was such a mess. Chapter 10, versus Zabuza. Kurenai was clearly an emotional mess after seeing her Genin murdered, but she was still a Jonin. She calmed down halfway on her way to Zabuza, and instead of trying to charge him down with a kunai, her hands flickered in a flutter of hand seals as she cast a jinjutsu at him. Seeing that, Rin quickly whipped out a kunai and threw it at the man's head, but as he expected, Zabuza dispelled the jinjutsu and parried the kunai, making it spin through the air around his body. He glanced at Rin with disinterest before turning his attention back to Kurenai. Only for Ren's kunai to explode, engulfing him in a wave of fire and metal shrapnel. Ninjas. They train themselves to notice and react to exploding tags, but if they don't see them, they tend to get careless. Fortunately for Rin, his exploding seals could be put directly on the kunai and were black, just like the steel kunai were made of. They were hard to spot during combat. But Zabuza was not such an easy opponent. Ren's eyes widened as he quickly ducked, feeling Kubikuribocho's swish through the air an inch above his head. Pivoting on his heel, Rin swiped a kunai full of wind chakra at Zabuza's calves, but the man just jumped over it, evading injury, only for a kunai to suddenly burrow into his stomach. Retracting his chakra string that scored said hit, Rin hopped back, evading the water that burst from Zabuza's body, confirming that it was just a water clone. Well, that was given. Rin doubted the real deal would have been unable to dodge his kunai on a chakra string trick. The Zabuza he was fighting was a bit too slow for a high A-rank ninja. Glancing around, Rin could barely see Itsuki and Kinji facing another water clone of Zabuza, while Kurenai seemed to be in a high-speed battle with the man himself. Surprisingly, she was doing pretty well, unlike Ren's teammates who seemed to be at the end of their rope. For a split second, Rin considered who to reinforce, but he quickly realized his teammates were shit out of luck. If he went to help them and Kurenai died, the situation would worsen. Kurenai had a much higher value as a combatant, unlike the two dudes almost losing against a water clone. Rin would prefer to find himself with Kurenai against Zabuza rather than facing him with his temporary teammates. Inwardly hoping that the two Chunins would not die against the water clone, Rin jumped toward Kurenai and Zabuza. Worse, the mist was already starting to reform. Seeing Zabuza going on the offensive as he got dangerously close to Kurenai, Rin threw a kunai, but he aimed not at Zabuza but at the ground in front of him, causing the man to stop and cautiously jump away from it when it landed. Sadly, the man remembered the exploding kunai trick. But the kunai did not explode this time. Zabuza's eyes looked at Rin, his forehead unhappily creased as he realized he had been tricked into aborting his attack. Rin just gave him a cheeky smile when suddenly, a hand of his shadow clone appeared from the ground under Zabuza, a kunai full of wind chakra cleaving straight through his right ankle. The timing was good. Rin's shadow clone emerged just as Kurenai hit Zabuza with yet another jinjutsu, so the man didn't have time to dodge. But the Zabuza in front of them burst into the water again, revealing that the fight was not yet over. Rin abruptly whipped a chakra string at Kurenai, connecting it with her back and yanking her away from her position as Zabuza appeared in front of her in a burst of speed and slashed at her. Her body was flung at Rin and smacked into him, causing him to slide on the ground a few feet due to the residual force. Noticing that her face was full of blood due to a shallow cut across her face, Rin rapidly threw Kurenai away as he felt the air being displaced behind him. "You are annoying." A growly voice sounded from behind Rin, but it was too late to dodge as Zabuza's sword was already halfway through his chest. In a puff of smoke, Rin disappeared, leaving behind a log, which made Zabuza huff in annoyance as he sank back into the mist. Fortunately, preparing the battlefield to Ren's advantage and spreading around some substitution logs was the first thing his shadow clone did before trying to score a hit on Zabuza. Frustrated, Rin appeared on a tree, having no clue where on the battlefield he was. All he could see was white mist, causing his shoulders to slump. "This is getting ridiculous," he grumbled. All he needed was to get his finger on Zabuza or his sword. But it was proving to be far more problematic than it sounded. With no other choice, Rin reluctantly once again sent out a powerful gust of wind, dispersing the mist, only to see Zabuza stand on the pond near the road. Ren's eyes widened as he saw Zabuza's hands going through multiple hand seals before a dragon made of water rose from the pond and smacked right into the middle of an empty road. For just a short moment, Ren's brain froze as he tried to comprehend why. But then Kurenai shimmered into existence on the pond, standing behind Zabuza as she buried her kunai handle deep into Zabuza's kidney. Surprisingly, this time the man did not burst into the water. She got his real body. Then again, a water clone is unable to use ninjutsu, so the second Zabuza used that water dragon, he revealed his position. With a defiant roar, Zabuza swung his sword at Kurenai, who was unable to dodge due to their proximity, cleaving her in two straight through her stomach. But her body shimmered again before dispersing into a white mist, and Zabuza's eyes widened in shock as a kunai ripped his throat open, Kurenai appearing behind him once more. Rin watched it with his jaw on the floor, having a hard time believing this just happened. For the entirety of the fight, Kurenai was on the back foot. Her Jinjutsu was very useful for creating openings for Rin. But other than that, it was almost as if she wasn't even there. Rin thought this was going to be like in those fanfictions where the protagonist had to deal with the opponent himself. That he would need to figure out a way to defeat, or at least survive Zabuza, by himself and save the day. He was totally not counting on Kurenai being actually capable of this. Was this even allowed? Wasn't it against some sort of karmic bullshit of destiny? Just then a mad cry full of sorrow resounded from the tree line, and a young man wearing a Kiri Hunter ninja mask ran at Kurenai with plain murderous intent, throwing needles at Kurenai, who seemed to barely stand on her own feet. But Rin knew about Haku's existence and prepared for him. His chakra fluctuated, his hands coming together, the name of a technique he was about to use on his lips, when Haku stumbled due to Jinjutsu and didn't even try to dodge as Kurenai instantly nailed him to the forehead with a kunai. Fun fact, being enraged makes people very susceptible to Jinjutsu. Rin owlishly blinked and closed his mouth with an audible click. Taking a deep breath, he awkwardly calmed his chakra. I guess I was relegated to the sidekick position. He wryly chuckled. While Rin's brain was working on comprehending the situation, Kurenai stumbled her way toward him and sat on the ground, leaning her back on the tree while breathing hard. Thank you. You distracted Zabuza long enough for me to set up my Jinjutsu. She tiredly spoke, trying to smile, but it only came out as a grimace. Rin remembered that her Jin and team had just died and realized she probably felt like shit. She was clearly exhausted and covered in mud and the wound on her FA. Wait. Rin blinked, realizing there was no cut across her face. Holy shit. It was just Jinjutsu? He felt incredulous. He no longer knew what in that battle was real and what was just her playing mind games and setting the stage to land that final blow on Zabuza. Yes. Rin was impressed. But he also felt conflicted. He had underestimated this woman far too much because of some preconceived notions from his past life. But she evidently did not get the rank of Jonin for free. Feeling that his shadow clone had dispelled, Rin's musings were interrupted as he received the memories and inwardly sighed. Kenji was dead and Itsuki was near chakra exhausted. Should he feel a bit bad for being satisfied with how his first serious battle against a highly skilled ninja in this world went? Glancing at Kurenai, yup, he was definitely not going to say that out loud. Chapter 11, After the Fight. Kurenai, Itsuki, and Rin sat in an empty room in Tezuna's house, still looking disheveled and weary as they had just arrived here a few hours ago, choosing to have a short rest before deciding on how to proceed. Unfortunately, even if Kurenai's students and Kenji died, Tezuna was found quivering in the bushes a bit further down the road. And since the client was alive, the mission was still ongoing. Rin looked at Kurenai, noting the dried tear marks on her cheeks as she clutched the scroll where Rin sealed the remains of her students. The fact she hadn't even bothered to try to hide them told him a lot about her current mental state. Moving his eyes toward Itsuki, the brown-haired man seemed to have difficulty staying awake, his head constantly nodding off as he refused to fall unconscious. His chakra exhaustion was nowhere near as severe as Kakashi's in the anime, but it was obvious the man would be of no help for a few days. We should go on the offensive and get rid of Gato. Rin plainly said, we have the advantage now. He most likely doesn't know that Zabuza is dead yet, so he won't expect it. Not our mission. Itsuki mumbled, and he was technically correct. The guidelines would not agree with that course of action. They were hired as a protection detail, not an assassination squad. According to the rules, they should not go beyond the parameters of their mission. Yes. But it is either that or risk Gato hiring additional rogue ninjas. And since Zabuza failed, he will go big the next time. Either in numbers or in quality. Rin argued. He honestly just wanted to kill the midget. With Zabuza gone, there won't be that bridge betrayal scene and Rin needed an excuse to deal with him. Zabuza's and Haku's death was not something Rin wanted to happen. He kinda hoped he could have saved them. But this was reality and that was a life and death battle. Rin long ago accepted that he simply could not control every outcome. Unexpected things happen in reality all the time. Silence spread through the room as Rin waited for Kurenai to speak. At the end of the day, she was the jonin in the room and it was her call. You are right. Kurenai eventually said in a forcefully bland tone, we can't afford him bringing in reinforcements. But the client can't be left defenseless. Rin, you will stay and guard Tsuno while I will deal with Gato. She added, and for a moment, Rin wanted to protest. But then he noticed that Kurenai's grasp on the scroll tightened and realized that part of her reason for going out of her way and targeting Gato was probably revenge. With a reluctant sigh, Rin nodded. That complicated his personal goal of ransacking Gato's belongings, but he knew there was no changing Kurenai's mind now. The meeting ended and Rin stood up, walking out of the house with the excuse of setting up some seals around it. When he was outside and mostly out of sight, covered by a few trees, Rin created a shadow clone who nodded at him and disappeared in a burst of speed. The clone was going to look for Gato's safe houses and gather the money and valuables there while dealing with as many mercenaries as possible. Partly, it was because Rin wanted to help the people of this country. Dealing with Gato would leave a lot of jobless mercenaries on this island and Rin was sure they were going to turn into bandits in a short order. It was better to unalive that problem. These were not some kids trying to survive. Gato hired scum. Slavery, extortion, rape, murder, yeah, Rin was not going to lose his sleep over getting rid of them. But he was a ninja and wasn't above greed. He had to admit that the valuables were a bigger part of why he sent his clone on a hunt. Fortunately, creating a sealing scroll with pocket dimension accessible through multiple seals bound to it was something Rin had already done during his attempts to recreate Horatian. So far, he failed in that endeavor. But he still made a lot of good discoveries during his attempts. Thanks to them, his clone could seal things into said pocket dimension and Rin would be able to retrieve them via another seal he had tattooed around his wrist. The best part? Creating a shadow clone also copied the seal. It was quite convenient. No longer did he have to fear losing his sealing scrolls. It was like having inventory from RPG games and Rin loved it. Of course, he kept that discovery quiet from the village. He didn't want to think about how much trouble the village's higher-ups would give him if they knew about it. The applications of that seal were quite juicy for a military force in an undeveloped world, and as a part of Barrier Core, Rin knew for a fact that the village tried to create something like that for the last 30 years, and failed horribly. Just the potential for sending instantaneous messages or supplies from the village straight to the battlefield would make a lot of people salivate. Rin could only wryly smile at how many secrets he had. Secrets he didn't want the village to know. It was not out of malice or anything like that. Simply, if they knew, they would make his life supremely troublesome. And then he would need to defect. He didn't want that. He might not be loyal to death to Konoha, but he was still born there and lived his entire life there. Preferably, he'd rather avoid such a bothersome thing as having to go on a run. It's why he felt so conflicted about his first serious fight against someone like Zabuza. He was happy that he didn't need to get serious and reveal more of his cards. But he also didn't like that he couldn't try his more destructive seals out. If Kurenai wasn't there, he could have cut loose. But she was, and Rin was certain everything that happened would be diligently reported to the village. The reveal of his exploding seals was already going to be a pain in the ass. The Hokage was no doubt going to try and have Rin produce them for the village. Fortunately, Rin was a step ahead and ensured that, unlike exploding tags, these seals were usable only by the person inscribing them. It took him weeks of trial and error to manage that. but he put in the effort to ensure he couldn't be asked to become some human printing machine for superior ways to explode things. As for sharing the knowledge on how to create them, the Hokage was not stupid enough to demand that of Rin, and Rin was not going to volunteer it. Personal techniques were a big thing for ninjas. The Hokage could order Rin to teach it to somebody, but that would ruin his reputation with many ninjas and clans who viewed personal techniques and clan techniques as sacred. It wasn't worth the price, and Sarutobi was not going to do it. That was not something Rin was afraid would happen. It was honestly a quite stupid mindset. This was a reason why ninjas had a hard time truly progressing and advancing as a whole. They did not share their discoveries and even tried to keep them to themselves. So, a lot of knowledge was lost with the death of the pioneer who discovered it, found by somebody else, only to be lost again, found again, lost again, and so it went until somebody finally decided to spread the knowledge so it wouldn't need to be rediscovered every 10 years or so, because ninjas died young, and with them, all their hoarded knowledge did with them. Well, as much as Rin was ranting about it, he wasn't going to share his discoveries either. At least, not yet. In the end, it was hypocritical of him. But he could live with that. Done with setting up the perimeter of detection seals, Rin walked back to the house while happily humming, intent on relaxing and enjoying his leisure time. With Kurenai after Gato's ass and Zabuza dead, this mission was basically over. From here out it was as good as a paid vacation. Chapter 12, Hinata's Assignment. After Kurenai dealt with Gato, the rest of the mission was just like Rin liked them. Boring. With nothing happening. Full of relaxing free time where he got paid for standing around and failing to look menacing. He even managed to rescue several million Ryo from Gato, so there really was nothing he could complain about his time in the Land of Waves. 2 weeks quickly passed and the bridge was finished. The people of the Land of Waves rejoiced. Tazuna almost died of alcohol poisoning. Itsuki, the lucky dog, had a happy Momo time with Tsunami, who nursed him to health from his chakra exhaustion, and Kurenai was silently grieving, intent to ignore both Itsuki and Rin unless absolutely necessary. Really, Rin started to think he was lacking some kind of protagonist aura. Chicks didn't dig him simply for existing, and getting stronger was actually hard. Wasn't that just unfair? They even managed to find a bandit camp on their way back to Konoha, and Kurenai decided to use it to vent. After hearing the despairing screams of the bandits and seeing the pain Kurenai casually dished out on them out of sheer spite, Rin was a bit happy that he didn't have said natural charm of a protagonist. Getting close to a woman who enjoyed mentally torturing her victims did not sound like such a good idea. Yeah. He wished Sarutobi Asuma good luck. Maybe dying to Haiden was the man's good fortune? Now, if only I didn't need to waste time writing a report on the mission. Rin inwardly smiled as he glanced at the paperwork on the Hokage's table. Heh. Who was he kidding? He wasn't going to do that. Smart people had shadow clones for their paperwork. Fortunately, it only took 30 minutes before they were dismissed. Yo, girly. Rin, leaning on a tree on Training Ground 41, raised his hand in greeting as Hinata entered the clearing. Missed me? He cheekily asked as she came closer. What he didn't expect was for the girl to spread her arms and engulf him in a hug, pressing her head to his chest. Raising an eyebrow at that, Rin mentally sighed in unexpected fondness and patted the girl's head. Oof. He playfully spoke with a chuckle. It was almost pitiful how starved the girl was for positive attention when he started teaching her. It was even more sad that he didn't even try to make her attached. Of course, the girl didn't seem to have romantic feelings for him. There wasn't enough fainting for that involved in their interaction. Or at least, that's what Rin hoped was the case. He was kinda scared to ask too. He was very much happy being comfortably friend-zoned. He had no intention of getting involved with a 14-year-old kid, thank you very much. After a few seconds, Hinata moved away with a faint blush and a small, embarrassed smile. So, Rin took it as his privilege to break the awkward atmosphere that was forming around them in the most dastardly way he could think of. Did you do your assignment well while I was away? He asked with the tone of somebody who knew she suffered and enjoyed that fact immensely. He truly had to give it his all to resist eye-smiling at her to make her more annoyed. Hearing him, Hinata froze and her eyebrow twitched as she gave him the cutest glare of them all. Her anger was truly the food for his soul. You are a bastard. For hours. Every day. At least. One day I had to spend 8 hours just running around the pond. After the academy. Even father gave me a weird look when I came home. She quietly ranted. Her voice was still a whisper, but not even one stutter. I am truly proud, Rin said with a smug smirk as he wiped out an imaginary tear from under his eye. The girl's fingers twitched as if she wanted to strike him with Jukin, but she held herself back. For the 2 weeks he taught her, he stopped her every time she spoke with a stutter and had her repeat the sentence until she said it without stuttering. It brought her a lot of frustration. But it was helping. Alas, when Rin left for a mission, he still wasn't satisfied with her progress, so he gave her an assignment. Her assignment while he was away was to simply run laps around the pond. She had to run 20 laps every day by default. And then, he also ordered her to try answering questions in the academy whenever she knew the answer. He counted that as doing his job as her tutor, considering he was hired to help her get better at the academy subjects, not to properly train her. The catch was, every time she stuttered while answering the teacher, she was told to add 1 additional lap around the pond. But still, 8 hours? Rin wondered how much she stuttered that particular day to have to run 8 hours. He had to resist the grin that was trying to show on his face. Heh. It was for her own greater good. And it was going to get only worse from here out. Ah, Rin dramatically sighed, putting his right hand clad in a fingerless glove on his heart. The sight of my hard work paying off is truly touching. As playful as he acted, his eyes observed Hinata like a hawk. Her fingers twitched again. A bit more violently. His hard work? It was she who had to run the laps. He wasn't even there. She had to take a deep breath to calm herself down. Rin was a bit disappointed at that. This was the next thing he would have to correct. The girl still held herself back. If she did that only when facing her sister, then it would be whatever for Rin. He couldn't care less. The problem was she held back against everyone. It's why he tried to make her angry and provoke a reaction from her. Well, it was a shot in the dark anyway. It seemed he would need to put together some creative training for her to show her the joys of brutally beating other people. I did the laps as ordered. Hinata unhappily mumbled, but her eyes showed a bit of excitement as she expectantly asked, "Will I get the reward now?" Oh, yeah, he promised her a reward, didn't he? Ren's lips twitched, but inwardly, he sported a full-blown evil grin. Did you get faster? He truly tried to ask it calmly, but it was hard to suppress the evil grin forming on his lips and speak with composure at the same time. Yes? Hinata quietly answered, slightly tilting her head at the weird behavior of her tutor. Good. Speed is the most important thing for a ninja. Rin sagely nodded, conceding the battle against the evil grin as he let it form on his face as he cheerfully said, "Your reward is more laps around the pond." What? He needed to see how fast she had gotten. How was he supposed to gauge that without seeing her run? Hinata looked as if he killed her puppy and it tugged on Ren's heartstring. He inwardly promised that he would teach her something new as the true reward for her efforts. But for now, he was going to enjoy making her day miserable. All in the name of training. What are you waiting for? Rin mirthfully asked. Off you trot. I liked you better when you were away. She muttered under her nose, shocking Rin with her rebuttal. He didn't think she had it in her. So, he answered her with happy laughter as he shooed her with his hand, causing her to reluctantly start running around the pond. The funny thing about Hinata's assignment was that he had no way to police her. He told her he placed a small invisible seal on her to monitor if she did the assigned work. But that was bullshit. How was he supposed to create a seal that could monitor how many times she stuttered in school and then check if she properly ran the laps she was supposed to? Okay. Properly thinking about it, maybe it wouldn't have been that hard to create such a seal. But he was busy. He was lazy. He really couldn't be bothered to do it. He had more important seals to work on. Hinata was really cute in that naive way. It probably never really occurred to her that he had no way to enforce his rules. If she cheated and didn't do the laps, Rin had no way of knowing it. Seeing how much faster she had gotten, she obviously did her assigned training diligently. It was almost a pity he would have to beat that cute naivety out of her eventually. Figuratively speaking, of course. Chapter 13, Joy is a Teaching. You did well. You are much faster now, Rin said to the panting girl who collapsed onto the grass after she finished 10 laps around the pond. She gave it her all since Rin wanted her to finish them as fast as she could. She still wasn't anything to write home about. He would say she could probably keep up a pace with the guy, Itsuki, who was on the last mission with him. Which was impressive for an academy student and spoke a volume about the effectiveness of her physical training under her clan. It was around a high genin level of speed. It was not good enough yet. Ren's goal was to get her to at least a low jonin level speed before she graduated. Maybe more, depending on how motivated to train her properly he felt. The plot might have changed, but Ren was sure there would be some manner of war in the near future, and a slow ninja was a dead ninja. He'd rather if the girl didn't die. It didn't hurt that he was starting to like her. She had a playful streak that the anime did not show at all. Then again, she did live in an environment where playfulness was tantamount to a deadly sin, probably punished by caning. He had less than 2 years until her graduation. He was playing with the idea of giving her his gravity seals, but he was still hesitating. Now that you are properly tired, it is time for some combat training, Rin suddenly said after giving Hinata 3 minutes to catch her breath. Hinata groaned and pushed herself back on her feet. Sensei? Did you train like this too? Of course not. What would I do that for? Rin said with an easygoing smile, looking at her as if she was crazy. Hearing him, Hinata's lips twitched downward. Then why do I need to go through it? She asked and threw Rin an accusatory look. For my personal enjoyment? Rin raised an eyebrow at her, enjoying the scowl on her face. It wasn't every day one could see a Hyuga scowl. Rin was proud to have this profound effect on the girl. All right. He continued after a few seconds passed, his smile falling off his face and his tone turning serious. My training was far more tiring than yours. Believe it or not, I am still kindly holding back. And he wasn't even lying. The first half year of using his gravity seals it didn't exactly hurt, but he was practically living in constant discomfort. And he was always tired before his body got used to always being weighed down. And the reason why we are moving to combat training is that you are still not giving it your all during spars in the academy, Rin said, and with the look he threw her he dared her to protest. Hinata just shyly ducked her head, falling silent. She couldn't argue against that, and she knew it. Look! I honestly have no idea how to make it better. Rin sighed and gave Hinata a genuine, wry smile. I think your kindness is great. Hinata's eyes widened at that, and a faint blush appeared on her face as she suddenly found her hands extremely interesting while pressing her index fingers against each other. It was a habit she did when she was extremely embarrassed. Rin actually found it rather adorable, but they didn't have all day, so he continued, I could give you an entire speech about how you are hurting your classmates by holding back. Now that pulled Hinata right out of her own world, and she wilted as if he had just dunked her with a bucket full of ice-cold water. But somehow, I don't think that would help you much. This is the best thing I could come up with. You are going to spar with my clone, trying to hit him. With that, a clone of Rin suddenly came into existence 3 meters away from him. No seals. No calling the technique's name. It just appeared. Completely silently. Hinata was not experienced enough to properly appreciate the absolute bullshit he had just done. Nor would she realize how much effort Rin had to put into practicing that technique to accomplish this. He had 2 free weeks during the mission, and he was not slacking during them. And neither were his clones. Still, this was one of the hardest things he had actually done so far when it came to ninjutsu. So, he kinda just wanted to show off. Even if Hinata's reaction was non-existent. The girl only looked between Rin and his clone, her reluctance clear on her face. She definitely did not want to fight. Deciding to give her a little bit of incentive, Rin grinned. This is your chance to get back at me, you know? You won't be physically hurting me if you hit my clone, but I will still feel the pain once it dispels. The girl suddenly stilled as her head slowly registered what Rin said. He could almost see how she started mentally going through the training and teasing he put her through so far. Slowly, all hesitancy disappeared from her expression and her eyes gained a slight vindictive gleam. Good girl. Rin inwardly nodded in satisfaction. That was exactly the reaction he needed from her. Well, then, Rin sat near a tree trunk and used it as a backrest as he pulled out a dark green book, his Fuinjutsu notebook, and opened it. Feel free to start whenever. His clone finished for him, giving Hinata a challenging smirk, and putting his hands into his pockets. You only need to hit him once and he will disappear. The shadow clones are extremely fragile. Rin said from behind his book, not even bothering to look at Hinata over the cover. But you will not score a hit unless you give it your all. The clone spoke, but seeing as Hinata still seemed to hesitate, he decided to be mean. Maybe I should make you run a lap around the pond for every second you hesitate? That did it. Without even realizing it, Hinata sprang forward, rushing at Ren's clone who only casually hopped back, and the second Hinata reached the place where he previously stood, a pink paint exploded from a seal he had discreetly placed on the ground with his foot, covering the wide-eyed Hinata from head to toe, causing her to trip in her shock and clumsily rolled a few times on the ground until she stopped right at the clone's feet. Heh, you might make a better pinkette than that classmate of yours. Sakura was her name? Ren's clone taunted, knowing that Hinata secretly disliked Sakura for having Naruto's attention and not caring about it. I heard Naruto likes pink hair, so I decided to give you a bit of help in that regard. Aren't I kind? The glare Hinata sent his way was legendary, but Ren's clone just gave her a cheerful grin. Maybe activate your Byakugan? He kindly advised her in a patronizing way as he looked down at her due to her being on the ground. Not able to contain her frustration any longer and seeing only one good target to vent it, the veins around Hinata's eyes bulged as she gritted her teeth and jumped at Ren's clone once again, this time more carefully. Ren enjoyed his day immensely. The sky was blue. Birds chirped in the treetops. The gentle breeze was comfortable. The sun was enjoyable. His Fuinjutsu notebook was again a few ideas richer. And Hinata was cosplaying as a rainbow, with a few added colors in the mix. All was as it should be in the world. Rin watched the fight from his comfortable spot, subtly looking over his notebook while hiding his amused smile. Hinata, in her multicolored glory, almost ferociously struck at Ren's clone, trying to hit his stomach with her palm, but at the last second, the clone pivoted on his heel, making her miss. You were so close, Hina-chan. Just an inch. Ren's clone exclaimed with pure happiness in his tone as he aimed his palm at Hinata, who flinched and promptly jumped back like a scared cat. The clone once got her point blank in the face with a seal on his palm. One that projected paint in the direction it was pointing toward. Hinata had no way of knowing that the seal had only ammunition for one use. It was empty, but the clone clearly enjoyed scaring her with it and using it to make her back off when she got too close. The clone gave Hinata an innocent smile as the seal didn't activate and the girl realized he was just bluffing. Again. It caused her to jump at him with newfound ferocity and angry scowl. She threw one gentle fist poke after another so fast that her hands started to blur, but Ren's clone was always just that inch out of her range. Always sidestepping when she thought she got him. His speed always slightly increased when she was sure of her victory. Rin saw how Hinata tried to brutally axe-kick his clone's face, only for him to grab her foot at the ankle and joyfully spin her through the air a few times, making her scream in fright, before releasing her foot. At the start, Hinata still pulled her punches despite being angry. But as the fight progressed and she got covered in more paint while Ren's clone taunted her, she slowly stopped holding back. She now tried to hit the clone with all she got. With all her speed and strength. With all the feminine fury she could muster. His clone literally annoyed her enough that she forgot to hold back. Rin had a blast watching it as he wondered if she realized how much force she was using. Some of her attacks were borderline lethal. This was also a great combat training for her. The paint seals could be exchanged with exploding seals, so getting covered in paint practically simulated a lethal hit. Hinata did not realize it, but Rin was using the training exercise to give her some much-needed combat experience. And he had to say, the girl was doing great so far. She was no longer falling for the simplest of traps and even managed to evade most of the hidden paint seals covering the ground of the battlefield. And by now, after almost an hour of fighting, the battlefield had hundreds of seals hidden all over it. The joys of fighting a seal master, right? Hinata had to fight while avoiding them all, and Rin had to admit he was slightly impressed that she was managing it. From time to time, she did accidentally step on a seal and got a new unexpected paint job out of nowhere, but Rin thought she would be triggering far more seal traps than she did. The Byakugan was indeed a cheat in this kind of exercise. But she was not fast enough to hit his clone, and he kinda did specialize in evasion, so really, she had no hope of winning this exercise unless his clone monumentally screwed up. Ren's clone substituted just as he was about to be hit, and a paint bomb suddenly appeared in front of Hinata's gentle fist strike, exploding upon hit and covering her again in paint. This time, it was orange. Opsy. But look! You match with Naruto now. He gave her a double thumbs up with a wide grin as he tilted his head and innocently asked, "Databeo?" Hinata screamed in impotent rage, the orange color dripping from her whole body onto the grass. Chapter 14, Meeting Choza. A month slowly passed as Hinata's training intensified. They slowly added weaponry to their spars, and Rin even rarely used ninjutsu when he was certain the girl could dodge it, just to prepare her to face it eventually. He also increased her physical workout and expanded it from just running around the pond to a proper physical conditioning routine. Although it was still focused mostly on speed, strength and endurance were no longer neglected. And Hinata was improving, both in her strength and in the Academy Taijutsu rankings. Unfortunately, she still held back against her classmates, so the improvement was not as dramatic as it should have been. But Hayashi was happy that his daughter started to show some meager potential again. Those were his words. So, Rin decided to let the issue go for now. The funny thing was that her improvement in the rankings came from the fact that she was too used to fighting Ren's clone. So, despite holding back in the academy spars, she now simply did not hold back enough. She was still not the best in her class according to these rankings, but she was usually in the top 7. That didn't mean that Rin neglected his own training. Hinata was in the academy for most of the day, from morning to around 3 in the afternoon. Rin had enough time to do his training and experiments. Plus he had shadow clones, and while he might not be Naruto level of broken with them, he was slowly developing some seals to make his clones more useful. He had to get to a level where he could at least survive Madara, and Rin was very aware that it wasn't going to happen without cheating. Admittedly, he didn't really have a fleshed-out idea about how exactly he was going to accomplish it. But he was certainly going to try his best. Or, die trying. He'd rather not do the latter, though. Entering Yakiniku-Q, Rin was intent on having some spaghetti today. But before he could find a place to sit, somebody suddenly shouted at him. "Rin! Come and join us!" Rin turned toward the voice and smiled when he saw Choza Akimichi sitting at the table with Shikaku Nara and Inoichi Yamanaka. He didn't know the other two men, but because of his dealings with the Akimichi clan, he knew Choza quite well. With a small exasperated sigh, Rin waved at them in greetings and approached their table. "Hello, Choza." He turned his head to the other two and nodded at them. "Mr. Nara and Mr. Yamanaka, nice to meet you. I am Rin. Sorry for intruding," Rin said as he sat down and was about to gesture at the waitress that he wanted to order. Don't bother. Just take what you want from the table," Choza interrupted him. The table was overflowing with various dishes Choza ordered for himself. But since he was willing to share, Rin wasn't going to refuse it. Free food was free food, after all. Reaching for the spaghetti dish, he put it in front of himself before pausing for a second. Then, He put his hand above an empty spot on the table, and with a small poof, a plate with 3 slices of cake appeared there. "Since you are taking care of the lunch, I can provide the desserts," Rin said, enjoying the expectant look on Choza's face. Cakes were another thing that had a very limited variety in this world. And while Rin did not know any cake recipes from his past life, he was perfectly capable of hiring a confectioner and giving him a few ideas. Most of them ended in horribly sweet failures, but some were a success. Needless to say, Rin always had a cake on hand. What would be the point in practicing Fuinjutsu if he couldn't at least enjoy his favorite food no matter where he was? "Oh, I can see why Choza likes you." Shikaku chuckled as he took one slice of the cake. "Come to think of it, it's been a year since you became a ninja, Rin." Choza spoke as he took the second slice. "Look at you. You even managed to earn a Chunin rank. I am happy you are doing well for yourself." "Minchum. It's been a busy year." Rin nodded, leisurely digging into the spaghetti dish in front of him. "I heard about your last mission. My condolences." Inoichi took the last slice. "Yeah. Poor kids. We were just a few seconds too late." Rin wryly smiled. He was pretty sure that Choza's friend was low-key trying to make a psychological profile of him, but Rin didn't mind. It was probably a habit for Inoichi at this point. He was talking about the reprimand. Shikaku interjected, his eyes curiously glancing at Rin. "HM? Oh. I don't care about that." Rin shrugged. "I am perfectly fine staying Chunin until retirement, so it doesn't bother me." Killing Gato apparently pissed off a few people among Konoha's leadership, so they decided to get butthurt and cause trouble for Rin in the only way they could. Sadly, getting rid of the man did not help the Land of Waves much, as the 4th Mizukage decided that the country would be a perfect place for a forward base against Konoha. Gato was his trade partner too, so his death gave him a proper justification for his actions. It was a clusterfuck of a situation. In canon, the man was long dead, so it wasn't as if Rin could predict his actions. Konoha and Kiri were now on the verge of war, but Rin didn't worry. Kiri was in shambles and still deep in their civil war. He believed that nothing was going to come out of this. It would be supremely stupid of Yagura to start something right now. And besides, Rin didn't have any way to stop the situation from becoming worse even if the war started. But because of this outcome, both Kurenai and Rin were officially reprimanded for their actions and for doing something outside of their mission parameters. Ren's prospects for promotion to Jonin in the future did not look all that bright with that reprimand on his record. But, meh. The joke's on them. Even if they offered the promotion to him, he would likely refuse it. This suited him just fine. Kurenai was devastated. The poor woman lost her Jinins and then had the book dropped on her. Inoichi sighed. "I heard that there were even talks about demoting her back to Chunin, but the Hokage got involved." Choza added, "But enough about the depressing stuff." He turned toward Rin with an expectant grin. "How is training the Hyuga kid?" "Anything you say will be used against Hayashi." Shikaku suddenly spoke, lightheartedly warning Rin, "Choza doesn't like him. Just keep that in mind, kid." Rolling his eyes, Rin huffed, "Hinata is good. I have problems making her stop holding back, but she has a lot of potential. All it takes is a bit of positive attention." "Positive attention, really now?" Choza's eyes sparkled. "Will I be invited to the wedding?" "Please, don't joke." Rin almost choked on the spaghetti in his mouth and just barely managed to swallow it before speaking. "What? You are 17 and the girl is 14. It could happen. You are spending a significant part of your day with her and giving her positive attention. Choza teased, making both Inoichi and Shikaku chuckle at the dismayed look on Ren's face. "I'd rather not have angry Hayashi Hyuga chasing me all over the village, thank you very much," he grumbled. "I doubt he would care." Inoichi scoffed, clearly not having a good opinion about Hayashi's parental skills either. "Well, if you fail to woo the girl, you could always marry Chisaki." Choza joked and laughed out loud at the grimace Ren now sported. Chisaki was Choji's 6-year-old cousin who declared she was going to marry Ren after trying his food. It would have been adorable if her parents hadn't taken it seriously enough to give Ren a marriage offer. Something must have shown on Ren's face back then because Choza had always such a great time teasing him about it. Sometimes it was easy to forget that this world was not completely out of the medieval ages yet. The conversation continued and Ren had to admit that both Inoichi and Shikaku were pretty cool guys. They didn't joke only about him. Soon enough, the jokes about Inoichi being an overprotective father, Shikaku finding everything troublesome, and Choza's gluttonous nature started flying left and right, making the mood merry. All in all, Ren had a pretty good time with them. Unfortunately, after 20 minutes he had to go as his clone dispelled, alerting him that one of his Fuinjutsu experiments was a success and he should go check it out. After Ren left, Inoichi looked at Choza. Did he really help Hayashi's kid get better? I heard she didn't take her training seriously. Nah. That's not it. Shikaku boredly said. From what little Shikamaru shared, the girl is a mess. She is always holding back, not wanting to hurt others. It's probably very troublesome for her teachers. Yeah, Choji said that she was cool. Choza sighed in exasperation. Choji is the same, that boy. He helplessly shook his head. Now, Hinata is still holding back but her results are improving and she wins more spars. Whatever Ren is doing, it seems to work. Oh, that must bother Hayashi. He tried to make her improve for years and this upstart Chunin just comes and manages to do it in a month. Shikaku let out a bark of laughter before taking a sip from his cup. That Hyuga pride must sting right now. Choza exclaimed with a laugh, taking a hearty bite out of the chicken leg in his hand. Unnoticed by them, Inoichi stayed quiet, deep in thought as his eyes stared at the chair where Ren sat a few minutes ago. He loved his daughter but he was also starting to worry about her future. She didn't train, only focusing on the Uchiha boy. She needed a wake-up call but Inoichi knew he was too soft when it came to his princess. Maybe. His thoughts strayed in a direction Ren would definitely call troublesome. Chapter 15, Troublesome Student. So, are you going to tell me what happened? Ren asked, looking at Hinata with an unamused stare. It was Saturday so he hadn't seen the girl the whole day. And when she came to the training today, she was a mess. She tried to valiantly hide it but the small wince whenever she stepped on her left foot was plainly visible to Ren's eyes. As was the badly covered bruise with makeup on her right cheek. Or the fact that breathing seemed to hurt her. Hearing the question, Hinata ducked her head in embarrassment. My father wanted me to have another match with my sister. She said in quiet distaste before looking up at Ren with feigned confidence. It's okay. I am fine. I can train today. Oh? Really? Ren pleasantly smiled as he poked Hinata's left cheek, right on the badly disguised bruise, making her yell in pain, which quickly turned into a gasp as a flare of pain from her lungs hit her. Are you truly fine? He asked in concern. He was quite demanding during her training but he never injured her to this extent. Mecham. A medic said so. Hinata mumbled, and that was that. Ren didn't know medical ninjutsu. He tried to learn it in the past but when he saw the mountain of medical texts he would have to read first, let's just say he did not get to the part where he was supposed to learn the technique before he bailed out. Alright then. Ren exasperatedly said. Is your sister always this brutal with you? That question made Hinata sad as her expression fell and she nervously clutched her hands together in a habit, only since she was declared the heiress. She is under a lot of pressure. She said with sad eyes and Ren had no idea how to cheer her up so he only awkwardly pulled the girl close into an awkward hug. She stiffened for a moment before leaning on him and holding onto him for her dear life, hugging the stuffing out of him. How was he supposed to comfort a teenage girl again? They didn't teach this shit in the academy. Have you ever thought about using your eyes to learn Kaiten? He awkwardly asked after he felt her calm down, making her finally release him from her death grip of doom, or some other main house technique? To at least protect yourself. I already know Kaiten. Hinata wetly sniffed and wiped away a tear from under her left eye. You don't say. Rin hummed in a way that told Hinata she was in trouble, and her face became slightly redder as she realized this was something she was supposed to mention way sooner. And you were going to inform me when exactly? I was just afraid you would tell father. Hinata mumbled, averting her face away from Rin in shame. With a sigh, Rin understood her reason for keeping quiet. He didn't like that she didn't trust him. But I see. If you learn Kaiten without anybody teaching you, they would put you in the same category as Niji. People said that Niji was a genius. Rin said that it was bullshit. Niji just wasn't a freaking idiot. Rin was certain that the boy simply used his Byakugan to observe the main branch members practice and learn their techniques that way. That didn't mean it was easy to learn techniques via simple observation. Niji probably took several months. Rin was actually quite surprised that Hinata already managed it. Then again, this was the girl who in canon created her own defensive technique on par with Kaiten because nobody bothered to teach it to her. Honestly, it was stupid how much the Hyuga clan limited themselves in the name of tradition. They wouldn't use their eyes to learn techniques because that's not their way. They don't practice ninjutsu because it's not their way. They don't practice medical ninjutsu because that's beneath Hyugas. They were lucky Rin didn't want to become Hokage, because he would have executed half of that dim-witted clan for being stupidly stubborn the second he got the position. They had one of the best bloodlines in the world. A bloodline that lets them see the chakra in extreme detail, causing their chakra control to be superb by nature. That lets them see through objects and gives them an almost 360-degree field of vision. That lets them see for kilometers. And what do they do with it? They decide to focus on close combat taijutsu. It was no fucking wonder they never produced an S-rank ninja since the founding of the village. They were like that one idiot in the multiplayer RPG game who joined your party as a damage dealer mage but invested all his points into strength so his spells barely did anything. And they were proud of it too. Brother Niji? Hinata's eyebrows furrowed at that as she inwardly wondered why Rin mentioned the boy. Rin realized that he had blundered. Niji hadn't even graduated yet, so if he knew Kaiten already, he wasn't showing it to anybody anytime soon. Doesn't matter. Rin just waved the question away, causing an awkward silence to spread through the surroundings for a few moments. You really don't want your sister to be sealed, do you? Rin eventually said, putting into words the reason Hinata let herself be beaten like this. He sparred with the girl. There was no way she would be having trouble with her sister as she is now. Hinata wordlessly shook her head, clearly not comfortable with the direction of their conversation. Do you want to get sealed? Rin asked with a raised eyebrow, but Hinata had no answer for that, so she just ducked her head again, staying silent. He sighed once again. This girl was just so troublesome. As I see it, there is just one solution to this problem. He told her, making her give him a wide-eyed look. She had probably already accepted her fate and did not see a way out. That didn't mean she liked it. You have to become really powerful. Enough that your clan elders won't be able to mess with you. Thanks to her father, she was in a unique position. Hyugas were sealed as children. It did not matter how strong they became in their adulthood. Once they had that seal on their forehead, even a jonin could be brought to knees with a simple hand seal. But if Hinata became a jonin-level ninja before she was sealed? Good luck trying to put that seal on her. It wasn't a foolproof plan, but it was the best Rin got. Is that really possible? Hinata quietly asked as she clutched the hem of her jacket. She still wore it every time she came into the training field, but she always diligently took it off for her training just as Rin asked of her. You won't know unless you try. And you have one advantage that just might make it happen. Rin pointed out. What advantage? Hinata asked in a puzzled tone. You have me as your teacher. Rin proclaimed in feigned arrogance, even going as far as smirking at the girl and raising his nose high into the air. It got the desired result and Hinata giggled. The tension left her shoulders as she relaxed. So, wanna try? Rin asked her and his smirk melted into a small supportive smile. Hinata's cheeks flushed as her lips stretched into an involuntary happy smile of her own. I'll be in your care, teacher. Now then. Rin started to wonder how to tell the 14-year-old teenage girl that he would have to see her naked in order to paint gravity seals on her. That was going to be a fun conversation, wasn't it? Chapter 16, Gravity Seals. There. That's done, Rin tensely said after finishing drawing the gravity seals on Hinata as he stiffly took her jacket from the ground beside her and covered her naked body before standing up and taking a large step back. He gulped. There must be something wrong with how chakra interacted with physical and mental maturity in this world. Now that he had a proper look, Hinata was a bit too developed for her age. Just don't think about it. All is as it should be. Rin embarrassedly tried to keep his gaze on Hinata's forehead, and damn if it wasn't hard. Hinata lifted her body into a sitting position, her face redder than ever as she quickly pulled the jacket tightly around her body, vainly trying to disappear within it, MHM. She looked down and absolutely refused to meet Rin's eyes. Right. Rin awkwardly coughed. I'll go and let you get Dre's dash. He abruptly stopped, noticing that her wide eyes were not looking at the ground but instead, they were aimed directly at his crotch and flushed from embarrassment. He had just finished drawing seals all over the girl's naked body. His reaction was only natural. He woodenly turned around and ran away at his fastest walking speed. Later in the day, Rin sat at the Ikaraku's, absent-mindedly fiddling in the ramen bowl with his chopsticks while his cheeks still felt hot and he only hoped they were not red. It was bad enough that he had to return once Hinata was dressed and explain to her how having gravity seals was going to affect her. They were both acting like embarrassed teenagers, refusing to look at each other while they awkwardly talked. Rin would love to say that he was cool and badass, taking everything in stride, and he certainly tried his best, but his best just wasn't good enough. At that moment, his mind just blanked out and he wished the ground would open and swallow him whole. Now that he regained some of his cool, he was wondering why they didn't have a class to deal with body shyness in the academy. Worse yet, because of the gravity seals, he needed to monitor Hinata's well-being. So, he scheduled a training session for tomorrow. He already felt mortified just thinking about it. But it was necessary. He told her she would feel very uncomfortable in the first month as her body grew used to constantly being under slightly stronger gravity. He remembered that he couldn't even fall asleep in that first month unless he was so exhausted he just fainted. That constant discomfort might not hurt, but it was always there. Like a persistent itch that was impossible to scratch, making a person unable to relax no matter what. Not to mention, being under heavier gravity was physically tiring even if the mind was not really registering it because the pressure was barely noticeable at all times, growing heavier as the user got stronger. Rin was sure that Hinata would come to the training tomorrow with black circles under her eyes. He didn't intend to train her. He was just going to knock her out and let her sleep for a few hours on the grass to make it easier on her. He knew he would have appreciated it if somebody did that for him when he was going through the experience. She was going to feel like absolute shit for the next few weeks, so it was Ren's duty as her teacher to make her discomfort as comfortable as possible. In the end, it would be all worth it for the girl. He explained to Hinata what his gravity seals were and how they worked, and the girl understood just what a priceless thing he was offering her. Unlike the fanfictions from his previous life, there was no such thing as gravity or resistance seals in this world. It's why Ren had to create his own. Most people in this world did not even know what gravity was. They did not study physics or chemistry in the schools over here. No such thing really existed. Kids in the Ninja Academy focused on learning how to be a ninja, and the less said about civilians the better. They were happy if they learned how to write and read. There was a reason why so many civilians sent their kids to the ninja academies in the ninja villages. They simply provided superior education and a chance at a better life. This world was still barely past its medieval stages. It was also still a feudal society. And Newton did not exist here. There was no such thing as Newton's laws. Or any other laws of physics. Oh, these laws still affect the world. But the natural sciences in this world were still in their infancy, not even having a name yet. People know that if they jump, they will fall to the ground. But they had no idea why and didn't really care to think about it. The theories about gravity did exist. Some of them were surprisingly advanced. Rin checked. But they were high-level ninjutsu or few injustice stuff that most ninjas did not even bother looking at. Scientists did try to understand the world. But the civilian scientists had a hard time getting funding, so sciencing was pretty much a hobby for nobles. It was not a popular hobby either. While the ninja scientists mostly focused on the supernatural nature of chakra and researched how it worked and affected the world around them. That's why Guy used weights. He simply did not have a better alternative. But unlike the gravity seals, the weights were limited. They did not put even pressure on the body, making it grow in strength disproportionately for different body parts. The stronger a person got, the more weights he needed for further growth, but weights were bulky, so there was a limit to how much a ninja could wear before they became a hindrance. The heavier the weights were, the bigger they were, and it wasn't as if Guy could strap house-sized weights to his ankles and live like that. There was a limit to how far a ninja, even one as crazy as Guy, could take weight training. With chakra, a person could theoretically enhance their body as long as the body registered it needed to grow stronger. It was proven that chakra allowed the body to evolve beyond human limits and slowly become stronger under strain. Guy was a very good example of that. But even then, the man got to his current physical peak, and now, no matter how many hundreds of thousands of push-ups he did, his gains were minimal. Because his body is too strong, and the pressure from a normie training like that is just not enough for his body anymore, even if he trains all day. Even if he wears the heaviest weights he could get his hands on. It's simply not enough pressure on his body. But he doesn't have a better alternative than just doing push-ups and running around the village with weights. It's probably why he always came up with such ridiculous challenges for Kakashi. The man definitely wants to get stronger. But it's maddeningly slow going at his level. That's why Ren's gravity seals were so special. With higher gravity affecting the body, it was always under pressure evenly on every part. Ren should be able to grow to Guy's physical prowess and then keep going further without stopping. The seals would always push his body just slightly beyond its limits, allowing for a slow, constant growth even if he did not exercise. Of course, reaching Guy's level would take him years. He wouldn't be near that level for a long time yet. But the potential of these seals was immense, and Hinata understood just how beneficial they would be for her. She also understood how precious they were and why their existence had to stay quiet. Everybody would covet them if they knew about them. Something that could allow a ninja to physically grow with no limit by simply being alive? Rin would have kidnappers after him from every major and minor village alike, Konoha included. It sounded far too good to be true, and Rin was still doubtful he happened to make something so convenient. There was bound to be some kind of problem in the future that would limit the growth. No way he could just become Saitama. The world was not so easy. Then again, Kaguya was physically much stronger than even Guy. She tanked Naruto's mountain-shattering punch with her face when he was in his sixth path Kurama chakra mode, and just a cheater bullshit given to him for free by his sugar daddy Hagoromo, and it did not even leave a small bruise on her. Her body was also evolved to that level by the chakra fruit. She didn't get it through training. So, technically it was just a chakra evolution of her physique. Ren's seals did something similar. Just in a very, very, very slow way. So, maybe? A man can dream, right? Speaking of Naruto, Ren's thoughts were suddenly interrupted as something orange sat next to him and rudely poked him in the arm. Nah, Annie, if you aren't going to eat that ramen, just give it to me, uncle. Ren's eye twitched. Chapter 17, Naruto Uzumaki. Ren turned toward the voice, only to see Naruto Uzumaki. This was actually the first time he interacted with him. For various reasons, he tried to avoid Naruto like a plague, but having a late lunch at Ichiraku was clearly tempting fate. He knew about Naruto and saw him quite frequently in the village. He just never approached him. Ren was about to refuse the kid's generous offer to take care of his ramen for him, when Naruto's expression brightened as if a light bulb had just switched on in his head before he loudly exclaimed while rudely pointing at Ren, "Ah! You are the suspicious uncle who escorts that weird girl to the academy." Sue's suspicious uncle. Rin almost choked on his spit, his mind stuttering worse than Hinata when he first met her while the cute waitress behind the counter started madly giggling. Naruto didn't mind the atmosphere, though. Ugh. Hibaba? That's her name, right? The really gloomy kid who faints a lot. Hearing him, Rin involuntarily snickered, his previous dismay momentarily forgotten. Oh, what Rin wouldn't give to have Hinata sit right next to him at this moment so he could see her expression upon hearing that. Now, he could correct Naruto, but where would be the fun in that? Yes. Hibaba. Rin nodded, having a fierce inner battle against the massive grin that wanted to split his face. Is she alright? She isn't sick, is she? Come to think of it, she doesn't faint that much anymore. Not since you started to bring her to the academy. Did you do something weird to her to fix her, uncle? Naruto asked as he threw Rin a suspicious look. There was a lot to unpack in the word vomit he had just heard. He was sure he was accused of something ridiculous too. But Rin decided it was not worth the brain power to think about it and ignored most of the brat's questions. Instead, he focused on the most important issue. Why are you calling me uncle? I am 17. He asked Naruto with a raised eyebrow. Huh? Naruto scrunched his face as if thinking too deeply about something while staring at Rin. Eventually, he just tilted his head in puzzlement. Are you sure? Brat. Rin retorted with a smile, making Naruto scowl at being called that. Here, have my ramen and shut up for a second. Rin said in a friendly tone and rolled his eyes as Naruto instantly cheered up, impatiently grabbing chopsticks. You are not that bad. Naruto grabbed the bowl in front of Rin and put it in front of himself before digging in. Naruto probably did not remember, but they actually went to the same orphanage. Back then, Rin had just found himself in Narutoverse as a 3-year-old kid, so he was obviously scared shitless. He didn't dare to approach Naruto. They had been in the same orphanage for 4 years, but Rin never even spoke to him. He was too afraid of Danzo. The old mummy could not get his hands on Naruto. But Rin imagined that having Naruto's childhood friend under his command was probably one of Danzo's wet dreams. Rin decided to avoid that scenario by simply not becoming said childhood friend. Then again, maybe Rin just had a too vivid imagination. Maybe it would have been fine. Still, befriending the village pariah, and a Jinchuriki to boot, was not a smart thing to do. It would have put Rin on the radar of far too many influential people, and he wanted to avoid it. He promised himself that he would make it up to Naruto later. Only, Naruto didn't need help. The kid didn't have as hard of a life as the fanfictions tried to make people believe. Deep down, Rin expected Naruto to have a miserable life. But that wasn't exactly the case. There were no beatings or mobs. And when Rin put a bit of thought into it, it made sense. Naruto was a Jinchuriki and nobody knew how the 4th Hokage's seal functioned. Jinchuriki, however, were known to go ballistic when angry or threatened. Nobody who knew what was at stake would let Naruto get hurt because nobody knew if it wouldn't make him go all Kyubi-sama on the village's collective ass. So, Naruto wasn't physically abused. He was mostly just ignored by everyone out of fear. He was like a walking and talking nuclear missile, and nobody knew if he would go off at the drop of a hat. Rin knew the seal was safe because that's how it was in the anime. But the villagers? They had no clue. Not even the ninjas knew. And that just made the civilians more uneasy. It was only natural that people would avoid him and try to keep their kids away from him. And no! The shops did not overcharge Naruto either. Rin did see Naruto pay for his groceries a few times and the price was correct. That said, no civilian would have the balls of steel to try something like that in Konoha. Everybody knew that it would make Sarutobi very angry, and while a civilian council did exist, they listened and obeyed their Hokage. After all, nobody wanted to be suddenly disappeared, and if there was one man in the village who could effortlessly disappear people from the comfort of his office, it was the dictator of the village full of hired killers. That said, not even the dictator could force the villagers to be nice to Naruto. Indifference was the limit he could manage. You are an academy student, right? Rin asked Naruto, watching him slurp the noodles with gusto. "HM? Yeah," Naruto said, barely paying attention to his surroundings as he inhaled the noodles. Rin suddenly smirked, deciding to tease him. "I heard you aren't very bright." "That true?" That made Naruto stop eating for a moment as he threw Rin a quick irritated look. "Who cares? It's not like some stupid tests would help me become a Hokage," he animatedly protested before stuffing his cheeks with more noodles. Rin snorted but didn't comment further. "Maybe you could ask Hyuga," he involuntarily snickered again, "for help with the academy work? She is quite smart unlike you." Naruto threw Rin an annoyed look but nodded nonetheless. There. That was the most help Rin could give Hinata. The rest was up to her. Contrary to the popular belief in his previous world, Naruto was not sabotaged in the academy. His abysmal grades were simply because he was stupid as fuck and did not even try learning anything that he deemed unimportant. Not even Mizuki would dare to teach Naruto wrongly. Because all it would take was Naruto offhandedly complaining about it once to the Hokage, and Mizuki would have an instant invitation to tea. The teachers mostly ignored his presence during their lectures, leaving the responsibility for his learning to him. It wasn't illegal, but it was definitely a dick move. And because of that, Naruto formed many bad habits, preferring to skip learning what did not interest him. With nobody to push him to learn, he naturally preferred to play or slack off instead of paying attention to lectures he considered boring. The longer this went on, the more behind he became until he was so behind his peers that not even Iruka could help him without Naruto honestly wanting to fix the issue. Which, he didn't. Because he didn't see how knowing how many ninja villages existed would help him become a kick-ass Hokage. After all, he was still just a kid. His answer to Ren's question pretty much perfectly showed his attitude when it came to academics. Worse yet, because of Naruto's status as a Jinchuriki and a Uzumaki, the first year of taijutsu classes was far too easy for him. He was always either first or second in that class. So, he didn't bother to properly learn the katas. Rin saw that train wreck himself. He was in the academy too back then when this was happening. Why would Naruto put in the effort to learn a proper taijutsu style when he could just punch his peers in the face or outlast them in the ring thanks to his bullshit endurance? Then, the other kids got older and learned a proper fighting style and Naruto's ranking suffered. He was still in the top 10, though, even with his crap taijutsu skills. So he still never saw the need to learn proper taijutsu. Using his natural resilience worked well against the kids in the academy, but real life was going to be very different. Rin hoped Naruto would approach Hinata and she could help him with his basics. But he also kinda didn't think it would happen. Even if Naruto approached her, Rin doubted he would learn from her. Naruto could be extremely determined and focused when something caught his interest. But catching his interest was the problem in the first place. At this stage in his life, he wanted badass cool jutsu. He didn't want to learn how to throw a punch properly. That was not cool. Naruto was a kid. Immature, unruly, free-spirited, one that was very rarely properly disciplined. One that hadn't yet gone through so many life-changing experiences that forced him to grow up like the canon Naruto did. Rin knew Naruto was going to grow up and be great. But the kid was not there just yet. Glancing at the 14-year-old blonde from the corner of his eyes, Rin had to admit, maybe this Naruto would be far more mature and competent by the time he graduated. He would be older than his canon counterpart and he was at the age when kids started maturing fast. It was just a pity Rin could not directly help him. Approaching a Jinchuriki would still make his life troublesome. Not to mention, Rin simply didn't know if making Naruto competent and overpowered wouldn't prematurely set off the Akatsuki. If they sent just 4 of their S-rank ninjas in a serious attempt to capture him before he learned Senjutsu, Naruto would be screwed. And then the world would be screwed shortly after. Rin had no idea what to do about this problem. So, he decided to do nothing for now. Honestly, fuck Sarutobi Hiruzen and his academy reforms. Why couldn't things be simple? Chapter 18, an offer Rin can't refuse. Sitting in his office at the Barrier Corps headquarters, Rin was reluctantly dealing with some of his accumulated paperwork. The office was bare bones and seemed not lived in. It wasn't decorated at all. Rin didn't bother. He was at the barrier core only once or twice per week, taking all the work and paperwork that piled up while he didn't come to work and finishing it in 2 to 3 hours tops. And that was only when he didn't feel lazy. Nowadays, sometimes he simply sends a shadow clone in his stead. There wasn't a problem with it yet. The higher-ups did not care as long as the work was done by the end of the week. The barrier core was a very relaxed and leisure workplace for a ninja village. Rin hadn't regretted joining it yet. If big ol' villains were not going to mess up this world somewhat fiercely in the future, Rin wouldn't have minded spending his life working here. Rin had been learning seals since he was 10. It has been 7 years now, and he spent a large portion of his day with his head buried in seal work. He became very good at what he did, so the usual seal repairs around Konoha that even a genin from the barrier core could patch up were no big deal for Rin. And if something important broke, Rin was in a great position because as a fresh chunin, he would never be called. That was a job for a jonin. There wasn't much to complain about. The pay was nice and the free time was abundant. Suddenly, the door to Rin's office flew open and a man in baggy clothes and wearing a red bandana walked in with a small scowl as if he owned the place. "Something wrong, Kenji?" Rin politely asked, inwardly sighing. He wasn't friends with his coworkers. At best, they were passing acquaintances, and that's how Rin liked it. Kenji was still a genin despite being in his mid-20s. He was rude but competent enough. He didn't like Rin much ever since Rin was promoted. Rin tried to keep his distance because the reason Kenji hadn't been promoted yet despite being competent enough was that he tried to steal the seal designs of one of their superiors. Well, the actual reason was that he got caught, but nevertheless, that didn't sound like a good prospect for friendship to Rin, who constantly invented new seals. "This dude wants something from ya." Kenji pointed at a 16-year-old ginger-haired boy who stood behind him, fidgeting a bit while wearing the uniform of the intelligence department. Rin gave the boy a quick once-over, instantly classifying him as a new genin, probably an errand boy still. "Hello, Mr. Dude." He smiled, trying to ease some of the boy's tension. "How can I help you?" "Inoichi Yamanaka sent me. He would like to see you, sir," the boy informed Rin, making him surprised. Rin felt a bit nervous. He knew it was probably nothing serious, but getting an invitation to the tea for a chat didn't sound very reassuring. He hadn't done anything treasonous in the past month or so either. With a sigh, Rin stood up and silently prepared his experimental transportation seal in his pocket. It wasn't finished work, and using it in combat was impossible, but he had already tested it with clones, and the seal could transport him away all the way to the land of waves where he left a beacon seal when he was there as Kurina's reinforcements a few weeks ago. It just needed around 20 seconds of concentration. His very own inferior Horatian knockoff. "Senpai, you haven't done anything stupid recently, have you?" Kenji chimed in with a grin, happy at the chance to get some prime gossip. Rin blandly looked at him and dryly said, "I gave the Uzumaki boy a bowl of ramen. But I swear it was a complete accident." Kenji snorted at that. "No wonder the head of the intelligence department wants to see you. That's practically a terrorist act." Rin rolled his eyes and looked at the messenger boy. "Let's go. The sooner I get this over with the better," he said with a sigh. "Mr. Yamanaka, you wanted to see me?" Rin asked as he walked into Inoichi's office. The man stood up and gestured with a welcoming smile at the empty seat in front of his desk. "Call me Inoichi, please." "I guess this is not an interrogation, then," Rin thought as he sat down. "What can I do for you?" Inoichi stayed silent for a moment, tapping his pen on the table. Then, he suddenly spoke in a measured tone. "I heard you were looking into mental techniques and release." Rin olishly blinked. He did ask around for information about these things, so he wasn't surprised the man knew about it. But as far as he knew, there was nothing wrong about it. It's not as if Yamanaka's had a patent on techniques affecting the mind. It was only their clan jutsu that was off limits. "Is that a problem?" Rin asked in a puzzled voice. "I can assure you I wasn't looking into your clan techniques." No. That's not why I mentioned it." Rest assured. Inoichi said, I heard and confirmed that you did wonders for Hinata Hyuga as her tutor. My daughter, Ino, is in a similar spot. The man looked Rin in the eyes. Suddenly, Rin really did not like where this was going. He'd prefer the interrogation, to be honest. I have no idea what to do with the girl. The world of ninjas is a dangerous place, but my little angel is not taking it seriously at all. He sighed, yet, I can't bring myself to destroy her peaceful childhood. So, you want me to be the villain? Is that it? Rin frowned. He had a hard time staying polite and keeping himself from deadpanning at the man. Inoichi wanted him to tutor his daughter like he did for Hinata. Ino was the same as in canon. A fangirl obsessed over Sasuke. She was an immature kid who was dieting, not taking her kunoichi lessons seriously, and thinking the world was full of roses and sunshine because of how spoiled and sheltered she was by Inoichi. If Rin had misgivings about accepting Hinata as his pupil, then he had 10 times worse misgivings about taking in Ino. He could just tell she would be an obnoxious little shit. On top of that, dealing with her Uchiha obsession was going to drive him mad in short order. He really didn't feel like doing it. Probably seeing the reluctance hidden on Rin's face, Inoichi decided to give him the proverbial carrot. I wouldn't mind sharing some theories and basic yin exercises if you took in my daughter as your pupil. It won't be anything secret or anything that could be termed as clan jutsu. Just exercises for Yamanaka kids. But I can guarantee you that you won't find anything better in the village. Hearing his offer, Rin inwardly whined like a kid who was just told there would be no candy before he did his homework. Rin needed info about yin release and how it tied into the mind. He wanted to use seals to alter the memory-sharing component of the shadow clones, but he needed a starting point. More information on how the yin aspect of chakra worked. Unfortunately, the information about that was not readily available. In fanfics, every kid and their mother knew yin and yang releases. But in reality, these were both high-end, top-secret, very niche things that not even many elite jonins knew about. Ino Shikacho clans were in a unique position when it came to yin and yang release. But they were not sharing. The memory function of shadow clones was taxing on Ren's mind. Even with just 3 clones, it was tough to deal with over 10 hours of Fuinjutsu work memory feedback per clone. Most of these memories were useless anyway. The important bits could be compressed into maybe 15 minutes of memories. Ren wanted to make his clones able to select which memories to send over without needing to feed him memories of hours of busy work and giving him headaches. But he still didn't want to deal with Ino. How about this? You are invited to our family dinner tomorrow. Properly think it over and give me your answer during it. Inoichi happily smiled, contrasting with Ren's sour expression. The bastard knew that Ren didn't want to accept the offer, but he also knew that it was too good to refuse. So, with a forced polite smile, Ren nodded, making a deal with the devil. For he was sure trying to wrangle the spoiled Yamanaka princess was going to be pure hell. Chapter 19, Ino. Ren knocked on Inoichi's door, feeling a bit nervous about attending their family dinner. The door opened and Ren's eyes fell on a 14-year-old girl with long flowing blonde hair and pretty blue eyes. Ren had to admit she was beautiful. And he promptly mentally winced, reminding himself she was 14 and most likely annoying as fuck. Still, his heart started beating slightly faster. Oh, hello. Ino's cheek became red as she blatantly checked him out, and despite his feelings about tutoring her, Ren couldn't help but feel a bit of pride. Naruto might not appreciate Ren's looks, calling him an uncle of all things as if he looked old. But Ren didn't look half bad. Thanks to his gravity seals, his lean body was perfectly toned, and he thought he looked quite handsome with his shaggy and spiky blonde hair falling around his face onto his shoulders, long enough to reach his upper back. His clear pale blue eyes had quite a few of his female classmates swooning in the academy, even though he tried to keep himself in the middle of the pack and didn't go for the top spot. Much to his dismay. He couldn't see them as anything but kids back then, so it was a very uncomfortable experience. Ren, right? Dad said you were going to come. Come in. I am Ino. She grinned and opened the door wider as she introduced herself. Yes. Thanks, Rin awkwardly said as he entered the house. From what he could tell, the girl had no idea about Inoichi's offer just yet. And he wasn't looking forward to that discussion. There was a reason why Inoichi hadn't told her yet. She was bound to take it wrongly. Following Ino to the kitchen after taking off his shoes, Rin saw an older blonde woman busying herself at the stove who reminded him of older Ino, and he felt genuinely jealous of Inoichi. His wife was gorgeous. Welcome. My name is Nariko. It's nice to meet you, the woman said with a welcoming smile. I hope Ino wasn't rude. Moom! Ino whined while playfully rolling her eyes at the woman with a grin. He is a big boy. He can take it. She threw Rin a mischievous look, making him snort. I am Rin. He looked at Nariko. Thank you for having me. And politely bowed according to the customs of this world. Oh, hello, Rin. Just then, Inoichi entered the kitchen. Noticing the good atmosphere, he instantly went for the killing blow like a true shinobi. Ino, I decided to hire Rin here to help you become a better kunoichi. If he agrees, that is. He threw Rin a questioning look, but Rin didn't manage to even open his mouth before Ino erupted. Wait, what? Why would I need to be taught by him? Isn't he like a genin or something? He can't be that much older than me, she exclaimed with a glare. I age gracefully? Rin raised his eyebrow at her, not being bothered by her rude attitude. Hearing that, Ino actually smiled for a moment, but then she remembered she was supposed to be angry and gave both Inoichi and Rin a heated glare again. I do just fine in the academy. I don't need a tutor. What would Sasuke say if he found out? I would be a laughingstock. She animatedly waved her hands through the air to emphasize her point. Oh, it was obvious to Rin that Inoichi deliberately chose this moment for this discussion, and since the man wanted some drama before dinner, Rin was going to oblige. You mean you aren't one now? He asked, tilting his head a bit, and both Inoichi and Nariko's jaws dropped to the floor. It gave pause to Ino too, before her rage came back with the full force of a tsunami. Her face became red from anger and she was about to shout at Rin, but he just sharply lifted his palm, stopping her in her tracks. You love the Uchiha, right? Rin abruptly changed the topic, making Ino confused. Yeah. And you know his goal is to eventually bring back his clan, right? Yes. Ino blushed a bit at that. I am going to help him with it. She gave Rin a challenging look, just daring him to say anything against it. Rin smiled, confusing her. She was just making it so easy for him. And I heard you constantly compete with other girls for his attention, neglecting your training. Rin nodded to himself as if confirming something. Ino just crossed her arms and huffed, I need to keep my figure. I can't become all muscly. Sasuke wouldn't like that. Beauty takes time and effort, she said as if it was the most obvious thing in the world, and gave Rin a dull look. Oh, Hagoromo, help me with this one. Rin subtly took a deep breath. Why couldn't he just write her off as a lost cause and move on? Glancing at Inoichi, who returned an embarrassed smile, Rin inwardly sighed. Ah, yes. The Yin chakra exercises and theories. He was starting to wonder if they would be worth this suffering. Outwardly, Rin just calmly chuckled at her. See? You totally are a laughingstock. He shook his head. Seeing that the girl didn't like that very much, he quickly continued, you do realize that Sasuke will never pay attention to a weak girl, right? That made Ino freeze as she blinked at Rin in incomprehension. The boy doesn't care about your hair or figure. He doesn't care how much you pine after him. What he needs to re-establish his clan is a powerful kunoichi that will ensure the potential of his future children. Rin shrugged, telling the girl how the freaking reality actually worked. Something Inoichi should have done long ago. Weren't Yamanakas supposed to be good at creating profiles and analyzing people or something? So far, Rin was not impressed. Sasuke was definitely going to have his pick from the available Jonin-level kunoichi in the village as long as he didn't pull the running to Orochi daddy act. But Rin wasn't going to tell the girl that. He wanted to motivate her, not crush her resolve. He won't pay attention to girls right now. No matter what you do or how pretty you are. He needs to train and become a strong ninja first. It's the only thing on his mind right now. Rin told her, but when the time comes and Uchiha decides he wants a girl, you better be at least a solid jonin or there is no hope for you. Get that, Blondie? Ino didn't answer. She just stayed silent for a few moments with a frown on her lips before she unsurely turned toward her father and subduedly asked, "Is that true?" "I am afraid so, Pumpkin." Inoichi gave her a sad smile. Uchiha-kun is traumatized. He will not accept a weak woman because deep down, he is afraid to lose his family again. Oh, my dear lord. It is sappy bullshit like this that made Ino so obsessed with the boy in the first place. Rin covertly gave Inoichi a dry, unamused look, wondering if the bastard was trying to make his job harder on purpose. Ino squealed. And Rin almost groaned as her mind obviously flew to the La La Land again. Deciding she needed some rain on her parade to be brought back to the real world, Rin quickly spoke again, not to mention, there is exactly zero chance that Sasuke would have only one wife. One woman is insufficient to re-establish a clan. If he is serious about it, he will take at the very least 3 but 5 or 6 is more likely. Ino looked as if he had just told her the world was ending and Sasuke was gay. She was totally out of it, her face pale from the sheer horror she felt. But Rin was not lying. The village would not allow the Uchiha clan to die out. They might not order Sasuke to take a wife. They had no right to do it. But they will definitely use every trick in the book, underhanded or not, to get him interested in loyal women and have some hanky-panky with them. In Boruto, Sasuke had only Sakura. But that Sasuke was on a level above Hashirama and absolutely nobody could tell him what to do. Maybe Naruto could, but he would not do it. Oh, and that Sasuke was clearly gay. Because imagine marrying a girl, knocking her up, and then fucking right off for 12 whole years. Was Rin actually supposed to believe Sasuke truly loved Sakura from that? He probably just married her because he felt sorry for her. He had to make new Uchihas. And Sakura was so hell-bent on the role that she would forgive him even shoving Chidori through her chest. It was simply convenient and Sasuke probably took it as atonement for his sins and the pain he caused the team. Not to mention, this was the dude who wanted to re-establish his clan but he only had one kid with the supposed love of his life. And he never had other kids with other women as far as Rin knew, but he wasn't a Boruto fan. He only watched the beginning so he might be wrong. But as far as he knew, and from how Sasuke acted in canon, he could only conclude that Sasuke batted for the same team. A sad thing for the Uchiha clan. May they rest in peace. No! He can't have multiple wives. Ino exclaimed, but Inoichi just compassionately put his hand on her shoulders, making her fall silent. Funny thing, monogamy was not mandatory in this world. Christianity did not exist. And many influential people had multiple women. Even the daimyo had one official main wife and then he had multiple concubines. The reason why ninjas usually married only one woman was very simple. They married kunoichi. If they didn't want to wake up castrated or not at all with their throats slit, they were not going to cheat on their wife who had superpowered senses and ninja observation skills. Rin actually did know a few guys who had multiple lovers too. Nobody talked much about it. But there was no law prohibiting it. But honestly, one woman was a lot of effort and time investment. Ninjas usually did not really have the time for more with all the training, missions, and other work they had to do in their day-to-day time. As Naraz would say, it was just too troublesome. Many kept their relationships on the level of casual hookups at best. With the high risk of death, the stress, and the trauma their profession usually caused, many ninjas didn't have it in them to get emotionally invested or do something as bothersome as relationships. Suddenly, Ino's downcast expression brightened as she came to some inner conclusion that brought back her resolve. I am going to become so strong that I will win his heart only for myself. Ino proclaimed with determination shining in her eyes, and while Inoichi couldn't be happier that his girl was finally going to take her training seriously, Rin wanted to put his head in his hands. She didn't get it at all. The girl was clearly delusional and he will have to deal with her. Truly, Hinata was a treasure. Oh, shit. I am going to need to explain this to Hinata, aren't I? Rin realized with dread filling him. Maybe the girls will be friendly? He really hoped so. Chapter 20, Two Students Meeting. The next day after the awkward family dinner, Rin picked Ino up at her house in the afternoon, before leading her to Training Ground 41 where Hinata was already supposed to be waiting for him. They arrived, and Rin smiled when he saw the Hyuga girl already doing her daily dose of physical exercises. Oh, she protested at first, saying that Rin was not doing them either. And sure enough, he was not. The gravity seals would make his body strong without them. But he was also a hypocrite and proud of it. So, his dear student whose ninja skills focused on taijutsu was going to do her exercises. He just told Hinata that once she got a student of her own, she could tell him or her what to do. The girl was all sorts of pouty that day, but she begrudgingly listened, and there was no problem with her ever since. This bitch? Ino whispered in surprise for the whole clearing to hear when she spotted Hinata, and Rin instantly facepalmed. Of course, his hopes that everything would go smoothly and the girls would get on well were dashed almost in the very first second he brought Ino to her first training session and had her meet Hinata. How could it possibly go any other way, right? Just his luck. Did I do something to make you angry? Hinata asked with scrunched eyebrows, wondering what Ino's problem was. It was a good question because Rin had no freaking idea either. I don't know. Did you? Sasuke started paying attention to you recently. I don't know what you have done to bewitch Ino put her hands on her hips, and Rin was surprised she wasn't growling at Hinata. When he heard her reason for acting out, he let out a groan. Of course, it had to be something childishly inane. He does? Hinata asked, interrupting Ino's tirade while being completely taken aback. Seeing that Hinata did not even notice the massive issue plaguing her mind as of late, Ino got even angrier. You dash. And Rin knew he had to intervene. Alright. Break it off. Don't start growling and biting her, Ino. You are supposed to be a kunoichi, not a stray cat. He put his hand on her head and roughly ruffled her hair, redirecting her anger at himself in an attempt to control the situation. Hey! Stop that! Ino shouted, trying to get away, but Rin was a bit too strong, so his hand stayed on her head. Minchum. Rin hummed, raising his eyebrow at her. Say sorry? She was so going to argue. Her expression clearly stated that. Her eyes narrowed and her mouth was already opening, but Rin put a bit more force on her head in warning with a bit too friendly smile on his face, and fortunately, her Yamanaka brain kicked in as she realized the message. Not wanting to get her hair viciously ruffled, Ino turned to Hinata, and with a big scowl, she gritted out, sorry. No problem. Hinata nodded in understanding, and Rin felt proud of her. Always so kin bimbo. She added with a friendly smile of her own, making Ren's mind freeze. What did I do to deserve this? He abruptly blurted out and looked toward the blue sky in exasperation. And here he thought it would be Ino causing the problems. Will you please behave? At least until the training session ends? Both of you? Ren asked in an annoyed tone, giving the two girls a serious look. They hadn't gotten even to the introductions yet, and the two girls were already on each other's throat. Since the peaceful approach was clearly not going to work with them, Rin decided to go with the law of the jungle. He turned toward Ino. You can piss Hinata off afterward, Ino. She will beat you down like a misbehaving stepchild, and that will be that. He was blatantly leading her on. And he truly hoped she would catch on. Alas, he was left disappointed. She? Beat me? Please. She had just recently learned how to speak without stuttering. Ino mockingly said, again loud enough for Hinata to hear. From what Rin knew, Hinata was usually paired with boys for spars in the academy. It might sound unjust, but she was a Hyuga, and they were known to train exclusively in taijutsu. Putting her against girls would be just unfair. So, Rin surmised that Ino did not know how she compared to Hinata, since she likely never faced her in the academy. While Ino did not catch on to the direction of Ren's previous provocation, Hinata was a veteran of getting teased by him during training. She quickly realized where he was going with this, and before Ren could propose a spar, she decided to do it herself. "So you wouldn't mind a spar, right?" Her friendly smile was still on her face as she ducked her head, touching her index fingers together in feigned bashfulness. Ren gave the girl a blank look at that. It was obvious to him she was faking it. "No. YW-. Ino was about to refuse when Ren shrugged and decided to just go with the flow. "Great. I didn't want your first training to be hard, but since you two girls get along so well, maybe having a manly exchange of fists will make your flames of youth burn brightly," he cheerily told them, making Hinata look at him as if he grew another head while Ino was standing there with her mouth open at being press-ganged into a spar. "You have 5 minutes for warm-up exercises. Get on with it. The spar will start after the 5 minutes are up." He waved them off and pulled out his Fuinjutsu notebook. 5 minutes later, the girls were warmed up and raring to go, standing a few meters apart from each other in the clearing with Ren between them. "Okay. No killing or crippling blows." He wasn't afraid of that happening. Hinata was too soft-hearted while Ino was too weak. But he had to say it. "And begin!" Ren shouted before jumping back to give the girls enough space for their fight. Normally, Hinata would hold back and wait for her opponent to attack, but she seemed a bit too angry today and instantly rushed at Ino, who was completely surprised by the sudden aggression from the usually timid girl. She tried to put her arms up into a guard. But because of Hinata's training with Ren, she was far faster than she showed in the academy. Hinata's fist flowed right around Ino's guard, so quickly that Ino couldn't even respond before she was slugged right in her face. Hinata didn't even bother to use the gentle fist. Ren owlishly blinked, rubbing his jaw in bewilderment. He did expect the result, but he didn't think it would be a one-hit knockout. "Seems like Ino will be much more work than I assumed." He inwardly sighed. "Did I hit her too hard?" Hinata quietly but worriedly asked as she came to stand next to Ren, and they both looked at Ino, who was still somewhat out of it as she lay on the ground. "She will be fine. This is exactly what she needs," Ren told her in the same volume, ensuring that Ino would not overhear them. "She needs to realize how weak she is. That's the first step." Hinata nodded and moved closer to Ren, leaning on his shoulder. "HM. So, should I hit her again, then?" she innocently asked. Ren sighed and looked toward the sky again. He was starting to understand Kakashi's attitude. Chapter 21, Joy is a Teaching Too. It has been several days since Ino's first training, and she was slowly getting used to it. After the first day when Hinata sucker punched her in the face, she had her reality check and grudgingly accepted that she wasn't as good as she thought. She even stopped complaining much. Ren took that as a win. The girl wasn't so bad. Oh, she was still annoying at times, but she was slowly growing on Ren. Like fungus. The girls formed a strange form of rivalry, and he bemoaned having his own version of Naruto and Sasuke under his tutelage. He had to intervene a few times, but by now, they started to understand his rules and mostly abided by them. The rivalry was good, but it shouldn't cross into animosity just because one of them did better than the other for the moment, and Ren had to do a bit of policing to ensure it stayed healthy. Ino was way weaker, after all, and he didn't want her to be bitter because of it. He wanted her motivated to improve. It put a bit of pressure on Ren, too. He spent his evenings thinking about how to help Ino level the playing field, but so far, Byakugan has been proving to be just unreasonably good when it came to learning how to use chakra. Fortunately, Ino also already knew tree walking due to her clan training, so she was on water walking right now. But unlike Hinata, it was slow going for the blonde girl. So far, Ren had nothing outside of a harebrained stupid idea from Potterverse fanfic whose name he didn't even remember about using Ino's Yamanaka techniques to train in her mindscape. The problem was he didn't know if it was even feasible. Sighing, Ren gestured at the girls who were running laps around the pond that it was enough. They approached him, Hinata as cool as a cucumber, while Ino was panting like a dog. He quickly hid his smile. He still remembered when Hinata was left in a similar state after running, but right now, the girl was milking it for all it was worth, throwing Ino a teasing look and making sure the blonde saw it. Only Ino's panting prevented her lips from stretching into a highly annoyed scowl and starting a verbal tirade. Rin gave Ino a few minutes to calm down while having Hinata practice the second step of Rasengan. Fortunately, for Rin's mental health, the girl didn't finish the exercise in a moment like the last time. Rin came to understand it happened mostly because the first step was about chakra control, and as a Hyuga, Hinata had a leg up in that. Once she knew the trick to it, which she could see with her Byakugan, it was easy for her. The second step, however, was much more demanding. It required the user to be able to generate a certain force with his chakra, to tightly condense it to generate the grinding pressure. But Hinata was neither a ninja with decades worth of experience like Kakashi or Jiraiya, nor did she have as dense chakra as Naruto. She had a lot of trouble learning the second step because her chakra just wasn't very dense or powerful yet. But a little bit of struggle was good for her. She practiced with the rubber ball for days now, and her chakra was slowly becoming better, more dense. That would help her immensely in her life as a ninja later on. Rin came to understand during his stay in this world that Madara and Hashirama did not have that much more chakra than others. The body could contain only so much chakra when it came to quantity. They simply had so dense chakra, so powerful chakra, that it might as well be ocean compared to the cup of water your usual Jonin had. For example, that wooden ANBU guy whose name Rin already forgot, could make a tree by using 1% of his chakra. But Hashirama's chakra was so powerful that his 1% could summon an entire forest of poisonous trees. It was simply an issue of quality. But ninjas had no idea how to improve the quality of their chakra other than use it a lot, which was extremely slow. Rin had an inkling the solution would lay in yin and yang release. But his research into it was just in the beginning stages. When Ino had enough rest, she approached Rin and Hinata. "I just remembered. My dad told me to give this to you." Ino gave him a scroll. "What's that?" Hinata curiously asked as Rin pocketed the scroll. "Just some theories and exercises on yin chakra." Rin waved her off and she stopped asking, understanding he would not be answering her. "Now, then," Rin said and created a shadow clone. "Ino, you are going to fight my clone and try to score a hit." He gave her an encouraging smile as the clone beckoned her to follow him, sporting a cheerful grin and throwing a paint bomb up and down in his right hand. Oh, the girl had no idea what was about to hit her. "Wait, is that?" Hinata's eyes widened. She probably did not think she would ever be on the spectating side of this exercise. "Yes." Rin nodded, patting a spot on the grass next to him in an invitation, which she quickly took. "Oh! I will enjoy watching this." Hinata licked her lips with an eager expression as she approached him, and Rin had to use his chakra to hide a blush. She was starting to become sexy. And oh, how it burned him inside to think that. But Hinata's bluish-black hair now sported blunt bangs covering her forehead while the rest of her straight hair started reaching her shoulders. It wasn't just the visual aspect that was good when it came to her hair. Rin said a few random things to her during her training, advice and details he noticed and thought could help her, and she seemed to take one of them to heart with her hairstyle choice. Due to her blunt bangs, her hair framing her face, and her tendency to duck her head, her hair could hide her eyes quite well, which could be invaluable for a Hyuga ninja. The initial few seconds her opponent wouldn't realize they were fighting a Hyuga and haphazardly engaged her in a taijutsu battle because she was a girl could prove very fatal for them with her gentle fist. Hinata's hair reminded him a bit of Samui, just in a different color. Her dark hair contrasted very well with her pale complexion and... Wait! Did she start wearing lipstick? He mentally furrowed his eyebrows while outwardly keeping his expression calm. Honestly, he hadn't noticed. And he was supposed to be the observant one here. Damn. Good for Naruto. He thought, hoping the kid would appreciate how much effort she was putting into looking good. They sat next to each other on the grass, Hinata still trying to do something with her chakra to the rubber ball while Rin had his Fuinjutsu notebook open now, but his attention was more focused on the spar between his clone and Ino that was just starting. Ino did the same exact thing Hinata did during her first try. Just in a lot bolder manner. She ran straight at Ren's clone, her fist cocked back. The result didn't change and Ren enjoyed the squeal of horror as Ino found herself covered in pink color from her head to her toes. Naturally, his clone couldn't just let it go and started teasing her, using the tried and proven method of comparing her to Sakura, which turned the squeal into a scream of impotent rage as she tried to rush Ren's clone again. The pink became mixed with neon red. Ren heard Hinata giggling and he couldn't help but snicker himself. He was almost certain the next color to be added to the mix was yellow. His clone was clearly going for a very hot combination of colors to fit Ino's fiery attitude. After having a good laugh, Ren glanced at Hinata. Speaking of Naruto, I met your classmate a few days ago at the Ichiraku ramen stand. Ren idly breached the topic. Is that why he asked me for help with the academy stuff? Hinata blandly asked, quickly putting two and two together. Seeing Ren nod in affirmation, she huffed, I had to refuse. Why? Ren turned his bewildered gaze away from the entertaining spar and toward her. My father forbade me to interact with him. Hinata sighed, biting her lower lip and clutching the rubber ball in her hands as she refused to return Ren's look. I'd rather not receive his punishment again. Oh! Ren inwardly facepalmed. He had totally forgotten about that. Sorry, I did something unnecessary. Wryly smiling, Ren apologized, realizing he meddled somewhere he wasn't needed nor wanted. It's all right, Hinata said, and her hair covered her face, making Ren unable to tell how she truly felt about it. He really didn't like that. Even called me stuck up. She chuckled in a self-depreciating way and Ren felt very bad. This was the problem with somebody who has foreknowledge meddling. He meant well, but the circumstances were different and he didn't take that into account, therefore, fucking things up. An awkward silence spread between him and Hinata as they watched Ino get embarrassed and cosplay as a human canvas for modern art. She didn't realize it, but her forehead now had I love a duck butt written on it, and Ren surmised that she was going to go ballistic after she returned home today and had a look at the mirror. Because Ren was not going to tell her. It was funnier that way. Who knows? Maybe it would cure her of her duck butt obsession. Seeing it lifted his spirit a bit, so he decided to start a conversation again and try to get Hinata's focus away from the previous topic. By the way, did your father mention something about me getting another student? Hinata turned to him and tilted her head. No, why? I just expected to be called to explain why I am not putting all my attention on your training by now. Ren hummed. Father does not care. Hinata rolled her eyes, but her tone was a bit sullen, making Ren wince. Another miss. He was on a roll today, wasn't he? I am sorry. He grumpily sighed. But Hinata just chuckled. It's all right. Her eyes narrowed and gained a strong, determined glint. I will get ridiculously powerful and then I will punch him in the face, she said, reminding him a bit of the resolution Ino made during the dinner. Ren had to hide his smile with his notebook. He now understood why so many people liked teaching. The thought that this confidence in the usually timid girl was inspired by him was very heartwarming. The good feelings did not last long as Hinata's face suddenly fell. Is it wrong that despite how he treats me, I still love him? She quietly and unsurely asked, ducking her head. No. Ren gently patted her head with a fond smile before turning back toward the spar. I am proud of you. He said the words that made Hinata's heart flutter. Thank you, she whispered, keeping her head ducked to hide her blush and happy grin with her hair. Chapter 22, Meeting a Bogeyman. Another few days passed and Ino started to notice the small progress she was making. Ren still remembered her jumping up and down in glee when she came to the training one day, shouting about how she beat Kiba on the track field in the academy during a running competition. Later on, Hinata told Ren that Kiba was ill and felt really sick that day, but Ren wasn't going to rain on Ino's parade. He let the girl enjoy it. She was improving, after all. He was so proud that he gave the girls a technique on hair manipulation he invented in the academy. He had a lot of time to play around with chakra back then and nothing to do during the lectures. So, he tried to replicate Jiraiya's hair techniques. He figured out how to grow his hair quickly, how to harden or sharpen them, but he failed to figure out how to shoot them like needles. And then he found Fuinjutsu and he never really finished his hair techniques, now that he thought about it. With a sigh, Rin called a waiter and ordered 2 sticks of dango for himself and a box of 9 sticks as a takeout. He was trying a new dango shop for lunch today. But back to his pupils, he promised Hinata these techniques weeks ago but he kinda forgot. So, he had to use the excuse that her hair was too short for them until recently. It was bullshit and sadly, she was going to realize that in the future. But that was a problem for the future Rin. And only if it was brought up by her. He hoped she would forget. Fortunately, a part of the reason he gave them the techniques was that he needed to go on another mission tomorrow so the girls would have a week or so of self-study. He was really curious how far they would get with the technique during his absence. Heh. He chuckled as he thought of Ino's expression upon receiving the technique and learning what it was supposed to do. He had probably become her favorite person. After Sasuke, of course. Rin would bet that Ino was going to spend every waking moment practicing it. If only to make her hair look prettier. A fond smile appeared on his lips. Ren's good mood was suddenly interrupted when a one-eyed old man with only one arm came and put a plate with 2 dangos on Ren's table before quietly sitting opposite him, making Ren blink at him. "Aren't you a bit too old and crippled to be working here as a waiter, Grandpa?" Ren smiled but inwardly he wanted to be anywhere but here. Danzo Shimura. Why the hell was his childhood bogeyman here? He still remembered the nights full of nightmares when he was a child about how Danzo would kidnap him. For years, he feared it. But with each year, Rin became less and less fearful, and more weary. He remembered being tired of being afraid. Thinking back, he did go to the same orphanage as Naruto, so it was probably well monitored so Danzo couldn't most likely do anything. And when Rin joined the academy, he kept himself in the middle of the pack. Neither disappointing nor praiseworthy. Just another generic civilian-born orphan ninja. Danzo probably didn't have a reason to approach him until now. So, why the hell is he here? Rin mentally went through the possible reasons until his mind stopped on one possibility. During the mission in the Land of Waves, he found a document stating that Gato was supplying somebody in Konoha with talented orphans for money. Gato probably kept it as a blackmail, but Rin knew that the document was not worth the paper it was written on. So, he didn't bother with it. Neither the Hokage nor the daimyo would do anything about it anyway. Whoever was buying the kids, and even then it was obvious to Rin that it was Danzo, never signed anything himself. Everything was done by a proxy. Well, no matter. It wasn't like Rin was afraid of the man anymore. He was still cautious and there was no way Rin would be meeting his eyes anytime soon, but that was just common sense. Not fear. The man did possess Shirsui's Mangekyo, after all. Fortunately, he would need eye contact to use it. "I take it you know who I am, then," Danzo stated. The man's eyebrow didn't even slightly twitch at the provocation. He was a ninja longer than Rin lived. He wouldn't break his composure because of some childish insult. Rin clicked his tongue. There went his peaceful lunch. He had to give it to Danzo. Ninjas in a dango shop within a ninja village? Rin never suspected a thing up until the moment Danzo showed up. But for this to work, the shopkeeper would have also needed to be one of Danzo's. Rin regretfully glanced at the dango on the table. This shop was famous for its dango and he was so looking forward to it. "You can eat it. It's not poisoned." Rin chuckled. "I don't trust you." Danzo nodded and took one dango stick, taking a bite. "I paid for that," Rin dryly said, before sighing. Well, whatever. He decided to just go along with it and took the other stick of dango as he put a paper in the middle of the table. Danzo looked at the paper but kept his composure and just turned back toward Rin and raised his eyebrow. "An exploding tag? Minchum. This one can level this entire building," Rin leisurely said and continued to eat the dango as if he hadn't just stated he put an explosive within arm's reach of the Konoha's council elder. "Just a precaution. I heard you are not a man to be trifled with." Besides, you brought your bodyguards and that makes me feel uneasy. Rin glanced over the room. He counted 6, but there were probably more of them hidden, all on guard and prepared to pounce at him. Yikes. Maybe Rin was just imagining it, but there was just a teeny little bit of respect that was missing before in Danzo's expression now. You would blow yourself up? And why wouldn't I? Rin asked with an amused smile, preparing to spew the bullshit of a lifetime. It's for my will of fire. I see, Danzo impassively said. Rin was a bit confused but shrugged it off. These words worked almost all the time even though he didn't think they had a proper unified meaning. They meant whatever the speaker wanted them to mean. It was a truly convenient phrase. Nevertheless, I came bearing an offer to you. There is a special secret division of ninjas under my leadership. We noticed your efforts in the Land of Waves where you assisted in bringing down Zabuza and your abilities as a teacher for young ninjas and a seal user. We could use a man of your talents. Join us for the greater good of Konoha and prove your will of fire. Danzo said, almost showing a bit of passion. But Rin just continued looking at him with a dry look for a moment, causing the atmosphere to turn awkward. Inwardly, he was surprised Danzo had the brass balls to speak so casually about Root. Then again, he didn't exactly name it and Rin had no proof. He could go to the Hokage and repeat this entire conversation to him and it wasn't like Danzo would get in trouble for it. It would be the word of a councilman against the word of a fresh chunin. In fact, Rin was certain that if he did that, the whole situation would be spun so against his favor it wouldn't even be funny. Danzo simply held a lot more influence and authority in the village than Rin. People like him had their ways. No thanks. Rin casually rejected the offer anyway. He had kept a low profile up till now to avoid exactly this kind of situation. But here they were and this happened anyway. There was no reason to stay polite right now. Danzo wasn't going to disappear into thin air just because Rin wished for it hard enough. It was time to be assertive. Danzo hummed at that answer and gave Rin a thoughtful look, tapping his finger on the table for a few seconds before opening his mouth again. I am Konoha's elder and can make life very difficult for you in this village. Rin snorted, yes. But there is just one small problem with that. I signed up to serve the Hokage. Not you. Unless you have a signed order from the Hokage that says I am under you now? Of course, he wouldn't have that. Root was supposed to be disbanded after the Uchiha massacre and Danzo was just an advisor. There was no way to get such a document for him. How would he even justify it to the Hokage? He wasn't supposed to have subordinates anymore. Even if he tried to falsify it, there would be no way to falsify the Hokage's special stamp that he kept on himself at all times. Besides, Danzo could make things hard for him. Sure. Promotion was basically unattainable now that Danzo would actively boycott it. With his influence in the council and other Konoha's departments, Rin could save the village from pain and he would still not get that Jonin rank. But the joke was on Danzo. Rin didn't want to be promoted anyway. There were other things Danzo could probably do but nothing overly blatant. Oh, Rin had no doubt that life was going to turn a lot more dangerous for him now. But it was still a better outcome than obediently becoming one of Danzo's little slaves. Thought so. Rin retorted when Danzo stayed silent. Not wanting to hear more threats or attempts to persuade him, he grabbed the exploding tag from the table and sealed it into the seal on his wrist before he gave Danzo a two-fingered salute and disappeared into a puff of smoke, showing that he was just a shadow clone. Back at the training ground 41, Rin suddenly turned his head toward Konoha, his lips set in a frown before he released a groan and shook his head. He sent that damn clone for his lunch and not only was he late, enjoying Dango, but he also gave him a headache. The worst part? His clone forgot to seal the takeout box before he popped. How troublesome. Rin rubbed his neck. Chapter 23, Lunatics. All of them. A day had passed since Ren's unwanted meeting with Danzo and he was currently at Konoha's gate, checking his supplies and sealing scrolls to ensure he brought with him everything he needed. The unfortunate part of being a ninja was that if you were sent on some important mission, refusing was not an option. And this mission came from the Barrier Corps themselves. Because of the hostilities between Konoha and Kiri that sparkled in the Land of Waves, the village was putting in the effort to ensure all detection seals along the coastline borders of the Land of Fire were functional. Because of that, the barrier core was spread thin. This would usually be a job for a Jonin from the barrier core, or someone who was Chunin for longer than Rin. But none of these were available right now, so Rin had to go. Honestly, he was surprised it took this long for him to be deployed. There were only 300-ish people in the barrier core. Fuinjutsu was not very popular, after all. The village already doubled the required weekly quota of exploding tags each member staying in the village had to produce because so many of them now had to run around the borders, checking these seals. The preparations for war were in full swing. Most ninjas in Konoha did not believe it would go that far. Kiri was in a very bad spot. They definitely could not start another war. But Konoha could not afford not to be prepared. Inwardly nodding to himself when he confirmed he had everything, Rin briefly greeted Izumo and Kotetsu, handing them the necessary paperwork that confirmed he was going on a mission, and then he was on his way. The anime always made it seem that travel time was short. During the Land of Wave arc, Team 7 fought the Demon Brothers, and it seemed as if the confrontation with Zabuza happened right after that. As if it was on the same day. But it most certainly wasn't. The elemental nations were huge. For example, when Gaara was captured by the Akatsuki, Naruto had to run for 3 days to reach Sunagakure from Konoha. That always sounded like so little time for Rin in his previous life. After all, if a normal person in his past life ran for 3 days, how far could he possibly get? But his perception was limited back then. He knew that ninjas ran far faster than normal humans, but he had no idea just how much faster. A Jonin-level running speed tempo on an emergency mission like that was around 100 km per hour. They could go as fast as a car on a motorway. Rin did not have anything to measure the speed with. But this was his rough estimate of the speed a Jonin could sustain long-term. Counting in the need to sleep, eat, make camp, and the fact that Naruto's team was caught in the sandstorm, they still ran for 15 hours a day for 2 days and spent the last day waiting out the sandstorm. So, based on that, the distance between Konoha and Suna was something like 3,000 kilometers. And Rin was really lowballing it. It was probably more along the lines of 3,500 kilometers. Rin couldn't be sure. It was not as if anybody measured it. This world had just exited its medieval stage. And they were still deep in feudal society. Distance between cities was still measured by how many days you had to walk to reach your destination. The border base Rin was going to for his mission was near the Land of Waves. But even though it was still in the same country, Rin would still have to cross several hundred kilometers. It took a week to reach the Land of Waves from Konoha with civilian walking speed. During Ren's last mission over there, his team still had to run for the entire day to catch up with Kurenai and her team. Rin could get there in maybe 17 hours of running if he pushed himself. But he had to be mindful of ambushes, so he didn't go as fast as he could. The meeting with Danzo was making him a bit paranoid. The traveling was very bothersome. It's easy to talk about running for the whole day, but actually doing it? It was Ren's most hated thing in his new life. He hated it even more than physical drills. Loathed it with his very soul. It was just so freaking boring. He couldn't even go through his Fuinjutsu work in his head because he had to be on guard. The scenery was just the same all the way long. Trees over here, trees over there, trees everywhere. Rin did think of using the transportation seal he had in the Land of Waves and leg it to the border base from there. It would take him maybe an hour, max 2 if he did that. But the seal was still a secret, and he did not need the questions about how he got there so fast or why he came from outside of Konoha's borders. He could sneak in, but the Land of Waves was teeming with Konoha ninjas right now because of the conflict. It would take only one of them spotting Rin for some uncomfortable questions to arise. So, as vexing as it was, Rin had to do the old-fashioned thing and obediently run there all the way from Konoha. Of course, he was etching his transportation seals with his chakra on bigger rocks and burying them into the ground with earth technique a bit away from the main road every 200 kilometers or so along the way. just so he could avoid something bothersome as travel time the next time he was sent on a mission on this side of the Land of Fire. Honestly, he didn't even care that his transportation seal could not be used in combat. No matter what he did during his experiments, it just didn't work, and he was starting to suspect that Hiraishin worked very differently from his own teleportation design. But who cared? The fast travel was very much worth it, even if using the seal took 20 seconds of concentration. Well, once he had set up a network of beacon seals, that is. The next day, Rin finally reached the border base, bored, tired, and swearing he was going to make a seal that would prevent his body from being besieged by forest insects even if it killed him. Of course, then he had to spend an hour going through various procedures to confirm his identity because ninjas were paranoid and the mission scroll from the Hokage was not enough for them. In any other situation, Rin would applaud their caution. But now he was just annoyed. He had barely avoided being thrown into jail by proving that he was indeed a seal practitioner here to repair their detection seals before he was shown into a small room with a very uncomfortable cot. He may as well sleep on the floor. That's how comfortable it was. Plus the room was chilly. They clearly did not even bother to invest in heating for the base. Rin groaned and decided to just set up a few heating seals on the walls before sleeping. He was also going to store a comfortable bed and a sealing scroll the next time he went on a mission. An hour later, he was finally finished making the room at least somewhat comfortable for him and laid on the cot, hoping he would sleep easily. As he was falling asleep, he suddenly remembered all these people in his past world who would give anything to be in his place. Rin just inwardly snorted. How could anybody actually desire to be reborn into this world and be a ninja was beyond him. Going on missions was pure torture. Lunatics. All of them. Chapter 24, Kigo. Hello, a man in his early 20s with mousy brown hair and a bit of stubble suddenly sat next to Rin in the cafeteria of the border base and cheerfully greeted him. I am Kigo. I will be escorting you to the detection seals. One of them is faulty for sure, but I don't know about the rest. He stretched his hand that held his chopsticks toward Rin's place but stopped when Rin caught his wrist and gave him an unamused look. Come on, man. Kigo pouted like a kid, trying to give Rin a puppy dog gaze. Just a bite? Rin had to admit, disturbingly enough, that it was working a bit. But he quickly shook himself. Get your own. Fine. Kigo whined before standing up. I'll be right back. He huffily walked toward the counter where they distributed the food. Rin just watched his back with a bewildered look, thinking, what the fuck just happened, as his introverted nature tried to come to terms with Kigo's extrovert behavior. It didn't take long for Kigo to return with a plate of food of his own, and despite people seated at many different tables waiting on him to join them, he sat down opposite Rin once again, a friendly grin on his face as he dug in. With a frown, Rin spoke, You seem familiar. I seem to recognize you from somewhere. It was really bugging him too. No idea. As far as I know, this is the first time we are meeting, buddy. Kigo casually shrugged and Rin nodded. Yes, he was sure he would remember somebody so annoyingly outgoing. Then again, I am very handsome. Kigo grasped his chin and posed a bit with a smirk etched on his face. Maybe a female friend of yours has a poster of me in her bedroom? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. He wiggled his eyebrows. Rin laughed. He could see why so many people here seemed to like him. It was funny because Kigo was definitely not handsome. He was not ugly, but he had a long way to go to be a pretty boy. He kinda reminded Rin of a more muscular Shaggy. The only thing the man lacked was Scooby-Doo. As he thought that, Rin's mind suddenly clicked. He remembered having similar thoughts in the past. The bingo book. He said with realization, you have a C-rank bounty from IWA. The Earthbender Kigo. Kigo's good mood suddenly seemed to be ruined and his shoulders slumped. Ugh. Don't remind me. I really messed up and my parents were very angry at me for getting it. I prefer to ignore that it ever happened. He scowled, glaring at his food. Contrary to the popular belief in his past life, bounties were not fun. Ninjas didn't want them. In stories in his previous worlds, people used them as some sort of level system. The higher the bounty, the more powerful the character. And they made the characters happy about getting more bounty as it raised their value, or something. That's not how it worked in the real world. For a ninja, having a bounty meant two things. Either they were in the field so long and they were so effective that their work was noticed, or they fucked up. Ninjas were supposed to be unnoticed during their more unsavory jobs. Having a bounty meant being a criminal in the country of origin of said bounty. Not many people talked about this. But ninjas were criminals. Their profession demanded it from them. Assassination, kidnapping, sabotage, spying, prostitution, threats, massacres, all ninja villages did these things to an extent. If you get a mission to blow up a bridge in another country and you are noticed, you won't be congratulated for a job well done. The less said about massacring a civilian village in another country because a rich merchant paid your village enough money for it. Oh, the villages tried to show a friendly face to the rest of the world to attract customers. But when it came to these unsavory well-paid missions, the Kage's mindset usually was along the lines, if we don't do it and take the money, another village certainly will. So, if it happens anyway, we might as well be the ones paid for it. Naruto truly did not understand the things Hokage did. The missions he signed on to get money for the village. So, if a person had a bounty on their head, they were either somebody a Kage or a noble wanted dead for some reason, or they did something naughty enough in another country, making them put a price on their head. The latter was far more common. And with having a bounty, came problems. Kakashi can't vacation in the Earth Country because he would have 6 squads of IWA hunter ninjas after his ass the second he is spotted over there. Having a bounty meant having bounty hunters, rogue ninjas, and even ninjas from other villages after your head. And in this world, people like Kakuzu exist. Having a bounty was most definitely not a joyous occasion. It made some low-end ninja tremble in fear for their lives. The system wouldn't exist if it wasn't a good enough deterrent. Alright, Shaggy. Rin jested, I get it. No talking about the drinks at the bar we could afford if we cashed in your head. That made the gloom around Kigo subside a bit and his lips twitched into the beginnings of a smile. Shaggy? He raised his eyebrow at Rin. But Rin just nonchalantly shrugged and pointed at him with his chopsticks. You look like Shaggy. Oh? Kigo scrunched his forehead in thought, probably wondering who the hell was Shaggy. Not that he would be figuring that out anytime soon. Rin thought the man would ask, but then he just grinned again in an uncaring manner and exclaimed, I like it. You heard that, boys? Call me Shaggy from now on. Kigo stood up and shouted to the rest of the room, getting back jeers and cheers as people raised their glasses in acknowledgement while Rin stared in dumbstruck silence at the spectacle. Does that mean we can't call you dumbass anymore? Somebody from the crowd shouted and the room erupted into abrupt laughter that only stopped a moment later when the commander of the base showed up. Shut up, you idiots. You are hurt all the way to IWA. The commander shouted, huffing and puffing in anger as he turned toward Kigo with a stern gaze, murder in his eyes. Opsy? Kigo sheepishly chuckled. Honestly, watching Kigo get a stern scolding for almost enticing a rebellion due to his sheer stupidity was the highlight of Ren's day. He had barely known Kigo for an hour, but he had to say, he liked the guy. Chapter 25, The Seal Inspection. After breakfast, Kigo still had something to do, so Ren had to wait for him until lunch before they finally left to inspect the detection seals. It sounded important. The detection seal system. But it was far less impressive than it sounded. Which was why nobody was rushing Ren to go and have a look at it. It was just one component of the border security here, and it wasn't even all that effective. The regular patrols with sensor ninjas probably caught more intruders than these seals. Especially since the seals were in the forest a few kilometers away from the shoreline. But it was like locking the door to the house after already locking the gate. It simply added a bit more security. The security seals send a signal to the master seal at the border base whenever somebody with a genin level chakra or more passes near them. But their range is only around 50 meters, and unfortunately, there are quite large gaps between the seal placements. The border was just too wide to have these seals every 50 meters, so they were only in key spots. Plus, It was obvious to Rin that they were painted by a single person, so probably not many in the barrier core could create them, which limited how many could Konoha put near each border base. It also showed how stretched thin the barrier core were to send a fresh Chunin for this maintenance run. But he wouldn't complain. There were some benefits for him from it. When Rin saw the first detection seal, he instantly had several ideas on how to improve them, but he didn't act on it. If he did so, the Konoha's higher-ups would definitely have him run all around the Land of Fire's border, adjusting every single one of these seals to be better. It would take him years. No. This was not the time to show off. This was the time to shut up and do his job, and only his job. He would keep his ideas and create something for himself based on them later on. So, how are things back in Konoha? Kigo asked after Rin checked the 10th seal and they were on their way to the 11th, probably bored out of his mind. They were supposed to stay silent and on guard, but the man was a genuine chatterbox and clearly found it hard. Rin shrugged. I don't know. The same as always? Peaceful? The village is preparing for sure, but the overall atmosphere did not change. That's good. Kigo happily smiled. I really wish this conflict would end soon. Sitting in the border base all day is boring. Can't wait to get back home, you know? Somebody waiting for you? Rin teased. Kigo rubbed his nose in embarrassment. Hee hee. I have a childhood sweetheart back in Konoha. I miss her. That's nice. It really was. Rin was happy for him. She didn't agree to go out with me yet, but... Kigo awkwardly turned his head away from Rin, making his lips twitch. Say no more. Let me guess. Rin rubbed his chin, pretending to be deep in thought before he deadpanned. She doesn't know she is your childhood sweetheart. It frankly wouldn't surprise him with how the man acted. Low blow. Kigo huffed, but no. I didn't ask her out yet. I wanted to. But I kinda chickened out, hee hee. He blushed before his shoulders slumped. I feel like a loser. But I'll ask her out the second I return from this mission. I already made up my mind. They walked in silence for a few moments because Rin genuinely didn't know what to say next. Fortunately, Kigo wasn't short for words. What about you? Anybody waiting for you back home? He asked, making Rin's eyebrows furrow as he considered the answer. Not really. I am tutoring 2 academy students back in Konoha, but I don't think that counts. Female students? Kigo threw Rin a mischievous grin. But Rin just rolled his eyes at the man-child. Does it matter? Yes. Kigo sagely nodded. They are girls. Rin dryly said. Hoo-hoo. Kigo's grin widened. And do you want to have sex with them? Rin didn't expect such a blunt question. Not even from Kigo. So, it almost made him miss his next step. After finding his balance, he turned toward Kigo and retorted, they are 14. That's not a no. Kigo helpfully informed Rin with a small shrug, making Rin snort. Fuck you. I am straight. Kigo casually shook his head in refusal. Rin threw him an irritated look and muttered under his nose, could have fooled me. Still not a no. Kigo reminded Rin in a sing-song voice, making Rin sigh in exasperation. You need Jesus. Rin said, speeding up his walking speed and leading Kigo slightly behind. Kigo owlishly blinked. Who? Quickly catching up with Rin, Kigo decided to change the topic, probably recognizing he was pushing a little bit too far into Rin's comfort zone with his teasing. Anyway, we should totally go out for drinks back home. I can introduce you to a few chicks. Rin glanced at him, noticing that he was actually serious right now, and slightly smiled. I thought you were the guy who had problems confessing to your childhood friend. How come you know chicks? Are there a lot of chicken coops near your house? Kigo just waved the question off. Looking at you, you will need somebody who can take the reins. A dominatrix per a dash. All right. He wasn't as serious as Rin thought. Ren's fist sprang up and almost smashed into Kigo's shoulder, but the man barely managed to jump back while shouting, Otto. Hey! What was that for? I'll show you, dominatrix. I'll tie you up and lead you inside the land of Earth borders if you try that. Rin threatened in a light-hearted tone. You don't need to go that far. I was just joking, bro. Kigo pouted and petulantly crossed his arms on his chest. Right. Because I am sure if I let you set up a blind date for me, Anko Mitarashi would totally not show up, yeah? Rin retorted with a small amused smirk. He did contemplate for a moment if it would be worth it. He was interested in Orochimaru's cursed seal, but meeting a psycho like Anko. Rin wasn't very enthusiastic about it. You know me so well already? Kigo interrupted Rin's thoughts. You really are my brother from another mother. Rin blinked at that, finding it hard to believe Kigo said this to him. You said the same thing to the guard just 3 hours ago. Right in front of me. He dryly said, giving Kigo a disbelieving look. Well, it works. Kigo awkwardly defended, rubbing the back of his head while his cheeks slightly flushed from embarrassment. Rin would bet the man forgot he said the same thing to the guard. Anyway, we are almost there. That detection seal is definitely faulty. Kigo seriously said, switching the topic and trying to pretend the previous few seconds did not happen. Rin contemplated for a moment if he should tease him further, but seeing the nervous look in his brown eyes, he decided to cut him some slack. How'd you know? He asked, focusing on the faulty seal instead. I tried crossing near it, but apparently, nothing was noticed back at the base. It clearly doesn't work. Kigo said as they approached a big rock reaching up to Rin's torso, sitting in the middle of the forest among the trees. It's on the rock. They came closer to the rock and Rin put his palm on it, pulsing his chakra in a specific way too. The seal suddenly appeared on the rock and Rin frowned. More than faulty, it looked disru. His eyes instantly widened as his ears caught a slight noise from behind and he jumped away from the rock, not even having enough time to shout out a warning for Kigo as swishing sounds passed the place he stood at just a split second ago. Rin landed horizontally on a tree trunk in a crouch and looked back toward the rock, only to grimace in sadness as he saw Kigo riddled with several kunai handles deep in various parts of his body. The one going straight through the middle of his neck was definitely fatal, even if he somehow miraculously survived the others. Releasing a sad breath, Rin glanced around the treetops and noticed 4 ninjas, all wearing a blank ANBU mask, making Rin curse under his nose, but he didn't have the time to complain as he quickly had to jump away from the tree he stood on before a fireball smashed into it. That's the end of this tale for now. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in part 2. Peace.